What if Tyrion Lannister escaped King's Landing with Shae and never looked back? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The black cells beneath the Red Keep reek of despair and rotting straw. Tyrion Lannister sits in the corner of his stone tomb, staring at the rusted iron bars that seal his fate. The trial by combat is over. Prince Oberyn Martell lies dead, his skull crushed by the mountain's massive hands, and with him dies any hope of justice. The bells tolled hours ago, announcing his guilt to all of King's Landing. Tomorrow, the executioner's block awaits. Yet tonight, footsteps echo in the corridor outside his cell. The guards' torches flicker as they approach, casting dancing shadows against the damp walls. Tyrion recognizes the measured stride before he sees the face. His brother emerges from the darkness, golden hair catching the torchlight, green eyes heavy with grief. "Jaime." Tyrion's voice comes out as a whisper. He rises to his feet, chains clanking against the stone floor. "Come to say farewell to the kinslayer?" Jaime waves the guards away with a sharp gesture. They retreat beyond earshot, their footsteps fading into the tunnel's depths. When they are alone, Jaime grips the bars with both hands. His knuckles turn white against the iron. "I'm getting you out of here," Jaime says. The words hang in the air between them like a promise and a threat. Tyrion stares at his brother, searching for deception in those familiar features. But he sees only determination etched in the lines around Jaime's eyes. "Father will have your head if you free me. You know this." "Father can go to 7 hells." The venom in Jaime's voice surprises them both. For a moment, neither speaks. Then Jaime's expression softens. "I should have been your champion. I should have fought for you." With one hand against the mountain, Tyrion shakes his head. "You would be dead, and I would still be condemned. At least this way, one of us survives. Both of us survive." Jaime produces a key from his cloak, the metal gleaming in the torchlight. "I have a ship waiting at the harbor. Varys arranged it, though he pretends otherwise. By dawn you'll be halfway to Pentos." The lock clicks open, but Tyrion does not move. Instead, he watches his brother's face, seeing something there that chills him more than the dungeon's cold. "What about Shae?" Jaime's jaw tightens. He looks away, unable to meet Tyrion's eyes. "Shae testified against you. She chose her side. She testified to save her own life." Tyrion steps closer to the cell door, his chains dragging across stone. "Do you think I don't know what Cersei threatened her with? What father promised her?" His voice breaks slightly. "I called her a whore to make her leave. I broke her heart to save her life, and still she stands accused as my accomplice. Tyrion, we don't have time for this. The guards will return soon." "Then we make time." Tyrion grabs his brother's arm through the bars. "I won't leave without her. If I'm to be an exile, let me be one with the only person who ever truly loved me." Jaime stares at him for a long moment. The torch flames dance in his eyes, and Tyrion sees the exact moment his brother makes his choice. "She's in the Tower of the Hand, Father's chambers." The words hit Tyrion like a physical blow. He staggers back, releasing Jaime's arm. "No, she wouldn't." "She's there, Tyrion. I saw her myself when I went to Father's solar earlier tonight. She was wearing a golden necklace, eating figs from a silver bowl." Jaime's voice is gentle but merciless. "She's made her choice." For a heartbeat, Tyrion feels the familiar rage building in his chest, the same fury that has sustained him through a lifetime of mockery and abuse. But then he remembers Shae's face during the trial, the tears in her eyes as she spoke the words that condemned him. He remembers the way she flinched when Cersei's guards escorted her from the witness stand. "No," he says quietly. "She's afraid. afraid and alone, and she thinks I hate her for what she was forced to say. He meets Jaime's eyes. I won't abandon her to father's mercy. Get her out with me, or leave me here to die with honor intact. Jaime runs a hand through his golden hair, the same gesture he's made since they were boys. You're asking me to break into father's own chambers, to steal his companion. I'm asking you to help me save the woman I love. Tyrion's voice carries the weight of absolute conviction. The woman who loved me when no one else could bear to look at me. The woman who saw something in the monster of Casterly Rock worth saving. The silence stretches between them, broken only by the distant drip of water somewhere in the tunnels. Finally, Jaime nods once, sharply. Varys will have our heads for this. The plan was simple. Get you out, get you to the ship. Now. Now we improvise. Tyrion steps through the open cell door, his chains still attached. We've done it before, brother. Remember when we stole honey cakes from the kitchens at Casterly Rock? We were 8 and 10, Tyrion. This is rather different. The principle remains the same. Don't get caught. They move through the tunnels with practiced silence, Jaime leading the way with a torch held high. The passages beneath the Red Keep wind like a serpent's coils, connecting dungeons to storerooms, storerooms to hidden entrances. Tyrion's chains whisper against the stone with each step, a sound that seems impossibly loud in the darkness. The guards will change at midnight, Jaime murmurs as they climb a narrow spiral stair. That gives us perhaps a quarter hour before they discover your cell empty. And how exactly do we reach father's chambers without being seen by half the Red Keep? Varys provided more than just a ship. Jaime pauses at a heavy wooden door, pressing his ear against the oak. He's been planning this for weeks, though he claims it's merely contingency. The man sees plots within plots within plots. The door opens into a storage room filled with wine barrels and sacks of grain. Jaime extinguishes the torch, plunging them into darkness. Moonlight filters through a narrow window, casting silver squares on the floor. They wait, listening for any sound of movement beyond the room. Father Solar is 3 floors above us, Jaime whispers. We take the servants' stairs, move quickly but quietly. If anyone stops us. You're escorting a prisoner on Tyrion Lannister's orders. The story writes itself. They climb through the Red Keep like ghosts, avoiding the main corridors where guards patrol in their golden cloaks. Twice they freeze in alcoves as footsteps echo past. But the night shift moves with lazy confidence. Who would dare break into the hand of the king's own tower? At the entrance to Tywin's chambers, Jaime produces another key. Varys again? Tyrion asks. The spider has friends in unexpected places. The lock turns with a soft click, and they slip inside. The Solar is exactly as Tyrion remembers from his childhood visits to their father's seat of power. Heavy oak furniture, dark tapestries depicting Lannister victories, and the overwhelming scent of authority that clings to everything Tywin Lannister touches. But the room is empty. The bedchamber, Jaime whispers, pointing toward an inner door. They cross the Solar on silent feet. Through the door's crack, they can see the flicker of candlelight. Tyrion's heart hammers against his ribs as they listen. No voices, just the soft sound of breathing. Jaime pushes the door open just wide enough for them to enter. The bedchamber is lavishly appointed, dominated by a massive 4-poster bed draped in crimson silk. And there, curled beneath golden sheets, lies Shae. She sleeps fitfully, dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. The golden necklace Jaime mentioned glints at her throat. But even in sleep, her face shows traces of tears. Tyrion approaches the bed slowly, afraid that sudden movement might shatter this moment like glass. Shae. He speaks her name softly, carefully. Her eyes flutter open, unfocused with sleep. When she sees him, She gasps and sits up suddenly, clutching the sheet to her chest. My lion! The words escape her lips before she can stop them. Then fear floods her features. You shouldn't be here. If Lord Tywin returns, he won't. Tyrion reaches out, hesitating before touching her face. We're leaving, Shae. Tonight. Both of us. She stares at him in confusion. I don't understand. The trial. You were condemned. My brother has arranged our escape. There's a ship waiting. Tyrion's voice trembles with an emotion he can barely name. Come with me. Please. Let me take you away from all this. Tears begin to fall down her cheeks. I said terrible things about you. I lied to save myself, and it condemned you anyway. How can you forgive me? Because I love you. The words come out simple and true. Because I know you were protecting yourself the only way you could. Because I would rather spend my life in exile with you than die alone with my pride intact. Shae throws her arms around him, and for a moment, the world narrows to just this embrace. But Jaime clears his throat softly from the doorway. The bells will ring soon for midnight. We need to move. Shae dresses quickly, in a simple brown dress and dark cloak. She leaves behind the golden jewelry, the silk gowns, all the trappings of her life as Tywin Lannister's companion. When she takes Tyrion's chained hands in hers, he feels stronger than he has in months. They retrace their path through the Red Keep's hidden passages, but now they move with greater urgency. The guards will discover Tyrion's empty cell soon, and all of King's Landing will erupt into chaos. Their only chance lies in reaching the harbour before the alarm spreads. As they emerge from a concealed door near the castle's base, the Blackwater Bay stretches before them, moonlight dancing on its dark waters. Ships bob at anchor like sleeping gulls, their masts swaying gently with the tide. Somewhere among them waits their passage to freedom. The third pier, Jaime says, pointing toward the harbour. A merchant vessel, flying Pentoshi colours. The captain has been well paid for his discretion. They hurry through the sleeping city, keeping to shadows and side streets. King's Landing feels different at this hour. Quieter, but somehow more dangerous. Every drunk stumbling from a tavern might recognize the condemned dwarf. Every city watchman might raise the alarm. At the harbour, salt air fills their lungs as waves lap against the wooden piers. The ship Jaime indicated sits low in the water, clearly laden for a long journey. A gangplank extends from its side like an invitation to a new life. My lord, a voice calls softly from the ship's rail. Varys emerges from the shadows, his pale hands visible in the moonlight. You're later than expected. Slight change of plans, Jaime replies, helping Shae onto the gangplank. Varys's eyes narrow as he recognizes Shae, but he makes no comment. Instead, he gestures them aboard with practiced efficiency. The captain is ready to depart immediately. The tide turns within the hour. As they cross onto the deck, Tyrion feels the ship move beneath his feet. After months of stone cells and courtroom floors, the gentle motion seems like freedom itself. Shae grips his arm, her eyes wide as she takes in their surroundings. Where will we go? She whispers. Pentos first, Varys answers. From there, the world opens before you, like a book waiting to be written. Behind them, the bells of the Red Keep begin to toll. Deep bronze voices crying alarm across the sleeping city. Tyrion's escape has been discovered. Cast off, Jaime shouts to the crew. Now! Sailors leap to obey, hauling in ropes and raising sails with practiced speed. The ship pulls away from the pier, just as torches begin appearing along the harbour walls. Shouts echo across the water, but they grow fainter with each moment. Tyrion watches King's Landing recede into the darkness, its walls and towers becoming shadows against the starlit sky. Somewhere in those stones, his father rages at his escaped prey. Somewhere, his sister plots revenge for this humiliation. But here on the deck of this Pentoshi ship, with Shae's hand warm in his, Tyrion Lannister allows himself to hope for the first time in months. The ship turns eastward toward the narrow sea and whatever future awaits beyond the horizon. The narrow sea churns beneath a grey dawn sky, waves crashing over the merchant ship's bow as it cuts through the choppy waters. Tyrion clutches the wooden rail of their cramped cabin, his stomach lurching with each roll of the vessel. Below deck, the ship's hold reeks of salt water and fear. Shae lies curled on a narrow bunk, her face pale green from seasickness. She has said little since they boarded, speaking only to refuse the stale bread and watered wine the crew offers. Tyrion watches her suffer and feels the weight of what he has asked her to sacrifice. A comfortable life in King's Landing, traded for exile and uncertainty on foreign shores. The storm will pass by midday, Varys says from the cabin's doorway. The spider moves through the ship like he belongs here, never stumbling despite the rough seas. Captain Moros knows these waters well. He's carried other passengers who preferred discretion. Other fugitives, you mean? Tyrion does not look away from Shae. How many have you smuggled out of Westeros, Lord Varys? How many enemies of the crown have found sanctuary through your networks? Those who serve the realm sometimes find themselves at odds with those who rule it. Varys steps into the cabin, closing the door behind him. Your father has many qualities, my lord, but mercy is not among them. Neither you nor the young lady would have lived to see another sunrise. Shae shifts on the bunk, opening her eyes to look at them. How long to Pentos? 3 days if the winds hold, Varys replies. Perhaps 4 if this storm worsens. Magister Illyrio has prepared quarters for you both. Comfortable quarters, with proper beds and hot meals. And after Pentos, Tyrion asks, what then? Do we spend our lives hiding in the free cities while my father's gold buys hunters in every port? Varys's smile is thin and knowing. Your father's reach is long, my lord, but not infinite. The free cities value their independence. They do not bow to Westerosi gold as easily as you might think. He pauses, studying Tyrion's face. Besides, you possess something more valuable than any bounty your father might place on your head. And what is that? Your mind. Varys leans against the cabin wall, steadying himself against the ship's motion. The Magisters of Pentos face challenges that require a Westerosi perspective. Trade disputes with the Iron Bank, negotiations with the Summer Isles, the growing influence of Daenerys Targaryen in Slaver's Bay. A man of your intelligence and experience could find himself quite welcome in the free cities. The ship rolls heavily to starboard, and Shae grips the bunk's edge with white knuckles. Tyrion moves to sit beside her, taking her hand in his. Her skin feels cold and clammy. Rest, he murmurs. We're safe now. Are we? Her voice is barely a whisper. Your father will never stop hunting us. You know this. Meanwhile, in the Red Keep's Tower of the Hand, Tywin Lannister stands before a massive table covered in maps and correspondence. Ravens have been flying since dawn, carrying messages to every major port from Old Town to Volantis. The Lord of Casterly Rock has not slept, has not eaten, has barely spoken since discovering his son's empty cell. Sir Kevan Lannister watches his brother with growing concern. Tywin's jaw works constantly, grinding his teeth in a rhythm that speaks of barely contained rage. When he finally speaks, his voice is deadly quiet. 1,000 gold dragons for information leading to their capture. 10,000 for their return alive. Tywin's finger traces a route across the map of the narrow sea. Dead is acceptable for the dwarf, but I want the whore alive. She will answer for her part in this humiliation. Brother, Kevan begins carefully. Perhaps we should consider... Consider what? Tywin's eyes snap up from the map, and Kevan takes an involuntary step backward. That my own son has made a fool of me before the entire realm? That a dwarf and a whore have escaped the Red Keep itself? His voice rises slightly. That somewhere, in taverns from Flea Bottom to Old Town, common folk are laughing at the great Tywin Lannister, who cannot even hold his own blood in chains? The door to the solar bursts open without ceremony. Queen Cersei strides in, still wearing her nightgown beneath a hastily thrown cloak. Her golden hair is wild, her green eyes blazing with fury. "Where is Jaime?" she demands. "I went to his quarters and found them empty. The guards say he never returned from his evening rounds." Tywin and Kevan exchange glances. Neither has seen Jaime since the previous evening, though neither will admit the growing suspicion in their hearts. "Your twin is likely at morning prayers," Tywin says carefully, "or perhaps inspecting the castle defences. Don't lie to me." Cersei moves closer to the table, her bare feet silent on the stone floor. "Jaime helped them escape, didn't he? My beloved brother freed the kinslayer and his whore. You will not speak such accusations without proof." But Tywin's voice lacks its usual conviction. The timing is too convenient, too precise. Someone with intimate knowledge of the Red Keep's defences guided Tyrion's escape. "Proof?" Cersei laughs bitterly. "The proof walked out of this castle in the night, father. The proof is sailing across the narrow sea while we stand here, pretending not to see what stands before our eyes. Meanwhile, the merchant ship fights its way through increasingly rough seas. The storm Varys promised would pass has instead grown stronger, driving walls of rain across the deck. Crew members work frantically to secure loose rigging as waves crash over the rails. In their cabin, Tyrion and Shae huddle together on the narrow bunk. The ship's timbers groan with each swell, and somewhere below them, cargo shifts ominously in the hold. But for the first time since the trial began, Tyrion feels something approaching peace. "I used to dream of the free cities when I was a child," he tells Shae, his voice barely audible over the storm. "Bravos with its canals, Volantis with its ancient towers, the pleasure gardens of Lys. Father had books with illustrations of their markets and palaces. And now we go there as beggars." Shae's head rests against his shoulder. "Fleeing in the night like thieves. We go there as free people." Tyrion tilts her chin up, meeting her eyes. "Whatever we build in Essos, we build together. No fathers demanding obedience, no queens threatening execution, just us." The ship lurches violently, throwing them against the cabin wall. Above deck, sailors shout orders in the Pentoshi tongue. Tyrion can hear the captain's voice rising above the wind, calling for the storm sails. "My lord." Varys appears in their doorway again, water dripping from his hairless head. "Captain Moros asks that you remain below. The storm is fiercer than expected, but he assures me we are in no real danger." How comforting. Tyrion helps Shae back to the bunk. "Have you sailed this route before, Lord Varys?" "Many times, though rarely in such weather. The narrow sea can be treacherous, but Captain Moros has navigated these waters for 20 years. His ship is sturdy, his crew experienced." Varys pauses as thunder rumbles overhead. "We should reach calmer waters by tomorrow evening. The storm rages through the night, tossing the ship like a child's toy. Tyrion and Shae take turns being violently sick, retching into a wooden bucket while the other provides what comfort they can. By dawn, both are weak and hollow-eyed, but the seas begin to calm." On the second day, they emerge from their cabin to find the ship sailing through relatively peaceful waters. The sun breaks through scattered clouds, warming the deck and lifting their spirits. Tyrion breathes deeply of the salt air, feeling strength return to his legs. Shae joins him at the rail, her colour much improved. She wears the simple brown dress from their escape, her hair bound back with a leather cord. Without the elaborate gowns and jewellery of her life in King's Landing, she looks younger, more like the camp follower Tyrion first met. "The water is so blue here," she observes, watching dolphins leap alongside the ship. "Bluer than the black water." "We're far from Westeros now," Tyrion agrees, "far from everything we've ever known." That evening, Varys joins them for a simple meal of salt pork and hard bread. The spider seems more relaxed away from King's Landing, almost human in the lamplight of the ship's small dining cabin. "Magister Illyrio will receive you as honored guests," he explains between bites. "His manse is quite comfortable, with gardens and libraries that might interest you, my lord. He has served as host to other Westerosi exiles over the years." "Other Targaryens, you mean?" Tyrion says. "I know something of your relationship with Magister Illyrio, Lord Varys. The question is whether his hospitality extends to Lannisters." "Gold has no family name," Varys replies smoothly. "And you carry enough Lannister gold to ensure a warm welcome anywhere in the free cities." On the third morning, the cry of "Land ho!" echoes from the crow's nest. Tyrion and Shae rush to the rail to see the coast of Pentos, rising from the sea like a golden jewel. The city's walls gleam in the morning sun, and the harbour bustles with ships from across the known world. As their vessel navigates between Pentoshi war galleys and merchant cogs, Tyrion feels the weight of finality settling over him. There can be no return from this step. When they set foot on Pentoshi soil, they will truly be exiles, citizens of nowhere, dependent on the kindness of strangers. The ship docks with a gentle bump against the harbour wall. Pentoshi dock workers swarm aboard, speaking their flowing language as they begin unloading cargo. The air smells of spices and exotic foods, of freedom and possibility. Varys leads them down the gangplank to where a covered litter waits, flanked by guards in silk and bronze. The bearers are slaves, Tyrion realizes, though they seem well treated and content. Everything in Pentos operates differently from Westeros. The journey through the city reveals wonders Tyrion has only read about. Markets overflow with goods from the Summer Isles and Yitai. Street performers juggle fire while musicians play haunting melodies on instruments of polished brass. Children run laughing between the stalls, their faces unmarked by the grim poverty of King's Landing's alleys. Magister Illyrio's manse sits on a hill overlooking the city, its yellow walls adorned with intricate carvings. Gardens surround the main building, filled with flowering trees and fountains that sing with falling water. It is beautiful beyond anything Tyrion expected. Illyrio himself waits to greet them in a courtyard paved with coloured stones. The Magister is enormously fat, his yellow beard oiled and forked, his silk robes straining over his massive belly. Yet his eyes are intelligent and welcoming. "Lord Tyrion," Illyrio says in accented common tongue. "Lady Shae, welcome to my humble home. I trust your journey was not too unpleasant." "We survived," Tyrion replies carefully. "Lord Varys speaks highly of your hospitality, Magister." "Varys and I are old friends. His friends are welcome here always." Illyrio claps his hands, and servants appear as if by magic. "You must be weary. Rooms have been prepared, and hot baths drawn. Tonight we feast in your honour." As servants lead them through corridors lined with tapestries and statuary, Tyrion feels Shae's hand slip into his. Whatever comes next, they have survived their escape. They have each other, and for the first time in months, that feels like enough. But even as they settle into their luxurious quarters, ravens are flying eastward from King's Landing. Tywin Lannister's gold has bought ears in every port, and the great hunt has begun. 6 months after their escape, the morning sun streams through the tall windows of Tyrion's study in Magister Illyrio's manse. Maps of trade routes cover the polished oak table, marked with coloured pins showing profitable ventures across the free cities. The former dwarf of Casterly Rock has become something unprecedented in Pentos, a Westerosi advisor who speaks with golden authority. Tyrion dips his quill in Myrish ink, calculating profits from a spice shipment to Norvos. The numbers please him. Lannister gold, properly invested, grows as surely in Essos as it ever did in Westeros. Perhaps more so, given the absence of his father's iron control over every transaction. "My lord," Shae enters, carrying a tea service, her movements graceful and confident. The simple brown dress of their escape has been replaced by flowing silk in deep blue, cut in the Pentoshi fashion. But more striking than her clothes is the change in her bearing. She carries herself like a lady born, not made. "The Magister Bellico wishes to see you this afternoon," she says, setting the silver tray beside his papers. Something about the Tiroshi delegation arriving next week. "Bellico always wishes to see me when there's profit to be made." Tyrion sets aside his quill and accepts the steaming cup. The tea is ash-eye black, expensive and bitter, the kind of luxury he never appreciated in King's Landing. "What have you been reading this morning?" Shae's face brightens. Learning letters has transformed her as much as silk and gold. "The Jade Compendium, the section about Yitai's ancient emperors. Did you know they once ruled lands larger than all of Essos?" "I did not." Tyrion watches her face as she speaks, marveling at the hunger for knowledge that drives her. In King's Landing, she had been intelligent, but unlettered, clever, but uninformed. Here in Pentos, with access to Illyrio's vast library, she devours learning like a woman starved. What else does it say? That their empire fell because the emperors grew lazy, trusting others to rule while they lived in pleasure palaces. Shae sits across from him, her green eyes serious. "It reminds me of King's Landing, of your nephew and your sister." Meanwhile, in the Red Keep's Tower of the Hand, Tywin Lannister stares at reports from his network of spies across the free cities. 6 months of searching have yielded nothing but rumors and false leads. The dwarf and his whore have vanished as completely as morning mist, leaving only whispers and the occasional sighting that proves false upon investigation. The Lord of Casterly Rock looks older than his years. Grey streaks his golden hair more heavily now, and lines deepen around his green eyes. He has not slept well since his son's escape, plagued by dreams where Tyrion's laughter echoes through empty corridors. The humiliation gnaws at him like a canker. "My lord," Sir Kevan approaches cautiously. His brother's temperament has grown increasingly volatile, servants walking carefully around his moods. "The small council awaits your presence." "Let them wait." Tywin does not look up from the reports. "Have you word from Braavos? The faceless men claimed they could find anyone for the right price. They found only empty rooms and cold trails. Whoever shelters your son has resources that rival our own." Kevan hesitates before adding, "Brother, perhaps it is time to consider that Tyrion may be beyond our reach." Tywin's head snaps up, his eyes blazing. "Nothing is beyond my reach. No one makes a fool of Tywin Lannister and lives to gloat about it." His voice drops to the dangerous whisper that makes grown men tremble. "I will find him, Kevan, and when I do, both he and that whore will learn the true meaning of Lannister vengeance." The small council chamber buzzes with tension when Tywin finally arrives. Queen Cersei sits rigidly in her chair, dark circles under her eyes, speaking of sleepless nights and too much wine. Grand Maester Pycelle shuffles his papers nervously, while Lord Mace Tyrell studies his fingernails with elaborate disinterest. "Your Grace, my lords," Tywin takes his seat without ceremony. "What pressing matters require our attention today?" "The realm grows restless, father," Cersei says, her voice sharp with barely controlled anger. "Riots in Flea Bottom, grain shortages in the Riverlands, and whispers that the crown grows weak. They say we cannot even hold our own prisoners." Young King Tommen shifts uncomfortably in the Iron Throne's shadow. At 8 years old, he understands little of politics, but feels the weight of his mother's expectations pressing down like armor, too heavy for his shoulders. "Mother, perhaps we could lower the taxes. The people seemed happier when—" "The people are sheep," Cersei cuts him off. "They need strong leadership, not coddling. Your father understood this, as did your grandfather." Tommen flinches at the comparison to Joffrey, his small hands gripping the throne's arms. Since taking the crown, he has tried to be kind, to rule with mercy rather than fear. But kindness seems to bring only more problems, more challenges to royal authority. Meanwhile, far to the north at Castle Black, Jon Snow stands before the assembled brothers of the Night's Watch. The vote has been cast, the choice made by men who have sworn their lives to the wall. At 16, He is young to command, but war and loss have aged him beyond his years. I swear by the old gods and new, Jon's voice carries across the courtyard, that I will serve as your Lord Commander with honor. The Watch needs unity, brothers. The real war is coming. Sir Alistair Thorne watches from the crowd, his face sour with defeat. But even he cannot deny that Jon Snow commands respect among the men. The young bastard has proved himself in battle, has shown the kind of leadership the Watch desperately needs. In Pentos, Tyrion receives word of Jon's election through carefully coded letters. His network of informants may be small compared to Varys's vast web, but gold buys loyalty even in the frozen north. The news pleases him more than he expected. Jon Snow represents something clean in a world grown corrupt, something that reminds him why good leaders matter. More ravens from the west, Shae observes, entering with the evening meal. Do you ever regret leaving? Miss the Game of Thrones? I miss the idea that I could make things better, Tyrion admits, but not the reality of what that game costs, not the price in blood and betrayal. He takes her hand as she sits beside him. Here, we build something new, something that belongs to us. Their evenings follow a pleasant routine now. Dinner together while discussing the day's business, then hours in the library, where Shae practices reading while Tyrion works on correspondence. Sometimes they walk in Illyrio's gardens, talking about their plans and dreams. It is domestic happiness of a kind neither knew possible. Yet news from the wider world intrudes even here. Traders speak of the young dragon queen conquering cities in Slaver's Bay, freeing slaves and crucifying masters. Her dragons grow larger with each tale, her army more fearsome. Some say she means to sail west, to reclaim her family's throne. What do you think of this Daenerys Targaryen? Shae asks one evening, as they review reports from Meereen. I think she is young, idealistic, and dangerous, Tyrion replies carefully. The kind of ruler who might change the world, or burn it down trying. He pauses, considering. Father would call her a threat to be eliminated. I find myself wondering if she might be an opportunity. Opportunity for what? To help build something better than what we left behind. Tyrion's mind works quickly, seeing possibilities others might miss. A queen who frees slaves might also free small folk from the boot of tyranny. A dragon rider might have use for advisors who understand Westerosi politics. Shae studies his face in the lamplight. You're thinking of offering to serve her. I'm thinking many things, but nothing is decided yet. Tyrion squeezes her hand reassuringly. We're safe here, comfortable, free to build whatever life we choose. I won't risk that lightly. But even as he speaks these words of caution, his mind races with possibilities. Reports suggest Daenerys' inner circle lacks experienced advisors, that she struggles with the complexities of ruling the cities she conquers. A former Hand of the King might have much to offer such a queen if he could find a way to reach her safely. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Cersei paces her chambers like a caged lioness. Wine goblets litter her table, and her golden hair hangs in unwashed tangles. Sleep brings no peace, only dreams of Tyrion's mocking laughter and Shae's triumphant smile. Your Grace, her lady-in-waiting enters hesitantly. King Tommen requests your presence at dinner. Tell my son I am indisposed. Cersei does not look away from the window, where the sun sets red over Blackwater Bay. Tell him his mother grieves for the honor his uncle stole from our family. The servant curtsies and withdraws, leaving Cersei alone with her fury. 6 months haven't dulled the edge of her rage, only sharpened it. Every day that Tyrion remains free is a fresh insult, a new wound to her pride. She has sent ravens of her own, offered rewards beyond counting, but the dwarf remains as elusive as smoke. In the throne room, young Tommen sits alone on the Iron Throne, its twisted metal cold beneath his small frame. The hall echoes emptily around him, shadows lengthening as torches burn low. He thinks of his uncle Tyrion, remembering kindness where others saw only mockery, remembering games and stories that made him laugh. Sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, Tommen finds himself hoping that his uncle found happiness in exile. It is a treasonous thought for a king to hold, but Tommen harbors it nonetheless. If Tyrion escaped their mother's wrath, perhaps mercy can exist somewhere in the world, even if not within these walls. Back in Pentos, Tyrion and Shae retire to their chambers as the city settles into night. Their rooms are spacious and comfortable, decorated with silk hangings and filled with books. It is luxury born of honest work and careful investment, not the inherited privilege of Casterly Rock. I received interesting news today, Tyrion mentions, as Shae brushes her hair before a silver mirror. Magister Illyrio claims he has connections to the Dragon Queen's court. Indirect ones, but real nonetheless. Shae's brush pauses mid-stroke. And nothing yet. I merely mention it as a curiosity. But Tyrion's tone suggests more than casual interest. The world is changing, my love. Old powers fade while new ones rise. A wise man positions himself to benefit from such changes. A wise man also protects what he has already won. Shae sets down the brush and turns to face him. We have peace here, Tyrion. We have each other, and we have freedom. Is that not enough? For now it is everything. He joins her on the bed, taking her hands in his. But tomorrow may bring choices we cannot yet imagine. When it does, I want us to be ready. Outside their window, the lights of Pentos twinkle like fallen stars. Somewhere beyond the horizon, dragons soar over Slaver's Bay, while ravens carry news across the narrow sea. The Game of Thrones continues without them, but its shadows still reach even here, in this peaceful room where two exiles dare to dream of happiness. The assassin strikes at dawn, when the servants are lighting fires and the guards are weary from their night watch. Tyrion wakes to the sound of breaking glass as a dark figure drops through their bedroom window, moving with liquid grace toward the bed where he and Shae sleep. The blade catches moonlight as it arcs downward. Tyrion rolls sideways, crying a warning, feeling the steel whisper past his ear to bite deep into silk pillows. Feathers explode in a white cloud as the assassin recovers, turning to strike again. Shae screams, scrambling naked from the bed as their attacker advances. The killer wears no colors, no identifying marks, just dark leather that seems to drink shadows. A face like carved stone shows no expression, no emotion, only professional focus. Faceless man, Tyrion breathes, recognizing the inhuman calm. He grabs the chamber pot from beside the bed, hurling it desperately. The heavy ceramic shatters against the assassin's shoulder, staggering him for a precious moment. Guards burst through the door, drawn by Shae's cries. The assassin turns like smoke, producing a second blade from nowhere. Steel rings on steel as he parries their spears, moving between them with impossible speed. Blood sprays across silk hangings as he cuts down the first guard, then spins to engage the second. "The window!" Tyrion shouts to Shae. But the assassin blocks their escape, driving the surviving guard backward with a flurry of strikes. The man's training shows in every movement, each cut precise and economical. More guards pound up the stairs, their heavy boots echoing through the manse. The assassin glances toward the approaching sounds, then at Tyrion and Shae huddled against the far wall. For a moment, those dead eyes calculate odds and outcomes. Then he melts backward, through the shattered window like water flowing uphill. By the time Magister Illyrio arrives with a dozen armed men, only blood on the floor and feathers in the air prove the attack was real. "Bravosi steel," Illyrio observes, examining the abandoned blade. "But the technique is unmistakable. Someone has paid the faceless men handsomely for your death, my friend." Tyrion pulls a silk robe around his shaking frame, his mind already working through implications. "Not someone. My father. He found us, after all. Or your queen sister," Shae suggests quietly. She sits on a chair by the window, wrapped in a blood-stained sheet, her face pale but determined. She always hated you more than he did. The knowledge settles over them like a funeral shroud. There can be no more illusions of safety, no more peaceful mornings in Pentoshi Gardens. Tywin Lannister's gold has reached across the narrow sea to find them, and where one faceless man fails, others will follow. We need to disappear, Tyrion says, but even as the words leave his mouth, he knows the futility. Change our names, our appearance, flee to Yi Tie or the Summer Isles. Running will not save you. Illyrio's voice is gentle but firm. The faceless men are patient. They will hunt you to the edge of the world if necessary. No, my friend, you need a different solution. Such as, you need to become someone worth more alive than dead. Someone whose death would cost your enemies more than your continued existence. The Magister's intelligent eyes study Tyrion's face. You need power of your own. Within days, Tyrion throws himself into Pentoshi politics with new urgency. If he must fight, he will fight with weapons he understands: gold, information, and carefully crafted alliances. The merchants of Pentos have long chafed under Braavosi competition in the eastern trade routes. Tyrion offers them something better than complaints: a plan. The Braavosi control the narrow sea because they control information, he explains to a gathering of wealthy traders in Bellico's marble-columned hall. Every ship that passes the Titan's shadow pays tribute, not just in gold, but in knowledge. They know our cargoes, our destinations, our profits before we do. Magister Varelos, a thin man with calculating eyes, leans forward in his cushioned chair. And you propose to change this how, Lord Tyrion? By creating our own network, Pentoshi agents in every major port, buying and selling information as carefully as we trade silk and spice. Within a year, we will know what Braavosi merchants eat for breakfast before they do, the merchants murmur approvingly. Gold they understand, but information warfare appeals to their competitive spirits. If the imp can outmaneuver the Iron Bank's agents, perhaps Pentos can reclaim its ancient glory. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Sir Jaime Lannister stands alone in the Red Keep's Godswood, staring at the heart-tree's carved face. The weirwood's red eyes seem to judge him, finding him wanting. 6 months have passed since he helped his brother escape, and the weight of that choice grows heavier with each passing day. His relationship with Cersei has soured beyond repair. She speaks to him only when duty demands, her green eyes cold as winter steel. Even their father treats him with distant formality, as if suspecting but unable to prove his involvement in Tyrion's escape. Sir Jaime, a voice interrupts his brooding. He turns to find Sansa Stark approaching through the dead leaves, her auburn hair bright against the grey sky. At 16, she has grown tall and elegant, but shadows haunt her blue eyes. Lady Sansa, Jaime inclines his head formally. You should not be walking alone. The Queen has concerns about your safety. The Queen has concerns about many things. Sansa's voice carries a strength that surprises him. Months of surviving Cersei's court have hardened her, taught her to mask fear with courtesy. I wanted to ask you about my husband. Jaime's jaw tightens. The marriage to Tyrion was never consummated, a fact that saves Sansa from certain accusations, but cannot erase the legal bonds. What about him? Is he truly free? The stories say he escaped with his paramour, that they sailed beyond the reach of justice. Her eyes search his face for truth. I find myself hoping those stories are accurate. The admission hangs between them, treasonous and honest. Jaime studies the girl who was once his daughter's age, seeing intelligence and courage that remind him uncomfortably of his younger self. Justice is a word with many meanings, my lady. Perhaps your husband found the kind that matters most, the chance to choose his own fate. Sansa nods slowly, understanding the careful words. Then I am glad for him. Few of us are granted such choices. Meanwhile, back in Pentos, Shae emerges from Maester Qyburn's chambers with news that changes everything. The Maester, once stripped of his chain for forbidden experiments, now serves Illyrio as a skilled healer who asks few questions about his patients' pasts. "Well?" Tyrion asks, though her glowing expression already provides the answer. 3 months along, she says, her voice trembling with joy and fear. Our child grows strong within me. Tyrion feels the world tilt around him. A child. His child. The one thing he never dared hope for, given his dwarfism and the cruelties of the world. But here, in exile with the woman he loves, that impossible dream takes root. "Are you pleased?" Shae asks, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "Pleased?" Tyrion laughs, sweeping her into his arms despite their difference in height. "I am terrified, delighted, overwhelmed. I am every emotion a man can feel at once." He sets her down gently, his hands trembling as they touch her still flat belly. "Our child will know freedom, Shae. Whatever else happens, they will never bow to tyrants or suffer for the accidents of their birth." But the pregnancy adds new urgency to their situation. A family requires more than clever schemes and temporary alliances. It needs security, stability, a future that stretches beyond mere survival. That evening, as they dine on honey cakes and Dornish wine, reports arrive that chill the blood. Dragons have been spotted over the disputed lands, 3 great shadows moving against the sunset sky. The Dragon Queen grows restless in Meereen, her conquest of Slaver's Bay complete. Rumors suggest she turns her eyes westward, toward the Iron Throne that is her birthright. "How close to Pentos?" Tyrion asks the nervous merchant who brought the news. 3 days' flight, perhaps less. The beasts grow larger each month. The largest is said to be black as night, with wings that span 100 feet. The man's hands shake as he accepts Illyrio's gold. They say the queen rides upon its back like a goddess of war. After the messenger leaves, Tyrion stands on the manse's highest balcony, watching the eastern horizon. Somewhere beyond the curve of the earth, Daenerys Targaryen commands dragons and armies. She faces the same enemies he once fought: entrenched power, corrupt traditions, the weight of others' expectations. "You're thinking of her again," Shae says, joining him in the cooling night air. "I'm thinking of survival, of our child's future." Tyrion's voice is thoughtful, calculating. "Daenerys Targaryen represents change, Shae. Real change, not just the shuffling of deck chairs while the ship sinks. If she succeeds in her conquest, what happens to exiles who served her enemies? That depends entirely on how valuable those exiles prove themselves." Tyrion turns to face her, his mismatched eyes intense. "I was Hand of the King once. I know every secret passage in the Red Keep, every weakness in its defenses. I understand the Game of Thrones better than any advisor she currently has. And if she refuses your service? If she sees only a Lannister kinslayer? Then we flee further east and raise our child among the Dothraki." Tyrion's smile is grim but determined. "But I think the Dragon Queen is more pragmatic than her reputation suggests. She freed slaves not out of sentiment, but because free men fight harder than chains. She might appreciate an advisor who understands such practical truths." Far to the west, in the Tower of the Hand, Tywin Lannister receives reports of the failed assassination with cold fury. The faceless men do not fail often, but when they do not try again soon. Their reputation requires perfect success rates, not messy second attempts. "Double the bounty," he commands Sir Caven. "Send ravens to every sellsword company in Essos. Someone will deliver my son's head if the price is high enough." But privately, Tywin begins to wonder if his obsession with Tyrion's capture has cost him more than his youngest son's freedom. The small council grows restless under his distracted leadership, and whispers spread through King's Landing about the Hand's failing grip on power. Perhaps it is time to consider other solutions, more permanent ones. In Pentos, Tyrion and Shae prepare for bed in their heavily guarded chambers, new locks, and armed men standing between them and the darkness. But security born of fear cannot match the peace they once knew. "I've been thinking about names," Shae says, as she brushes her hair, "for the baby. Something strong but not too proud. Something that belongs to them, not to the families we left behind. In Dorne they have beautiful names: Luwin, Oberyn, Elaria." Tyrion watches her in the mirror, marveling at how motherhood already transforms her. Or if it's a girl, perhaps something from the free cities: Nyssa, Belandra, Talea. "Names for a child of two worlds," Shae agrees, "neither fully Westerosi nor Essosi, but something new." As they settle into sleep, guards patrol the corridors, and dragons soar somewhere beyond the horizon. The Game of Thrones continues without them, but its pieces move ever closer to their quiet exile. Soon, they will face choices that will determine not only their fate, but the fate of the child growing within Shae's womb. Change comes to all, whether they seek it or not. The shadow falls across Pentos at midday, when the sun should reign supreme over the Golden City. Citizens pause in markets and taverns, shading their eyes as they look skyward. Three shapes blot out the light, wings spanning wider than war galleys, scales glinting like black steel and bronze flame. Dragons have come to Pentos. Drogon leads the formation, his massive form cutting through clouds like a sword through silk. Behind him fly Rhaegal and Viserion, their cries echoing off the city's walls with voices like thunder. They circle the city twice before settling on the Great Pyramid at its heart, claws scoring stone as ancient as Valyria itself. From the highest tower of Illyrio's manse, Tyrion watches the Dragon Queen's arrival with equal measures of awe and terror. The beasts are larger than any description could convey, their presence filling the sky with primal power. But it is not the dragons that concern him most, it is the opportunity they represent. "She comes seeking allies for her conquest," he murmurs, studying the banners unfurling from the pyramid's peaks. The question is whether she will accept aid from those who once served her enemies. Shae stands beside him, one hand resting on her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant now, she moves carefully, but with dignity. The child within her has grown strong, and Maester Qyburn predicts an easy birth when the time comes. "Will you try to meet with her?" she asks, though her tone suggests she already knows the answer. Not directly. Too dangerous with Jorah Mormont at her side. The man knows every Westerosi exile by sight and reputation. Tyrion's mind works rapidly, calculating risks and benefits. But perhaps there are other ways to make one's counsel known. That evening, Tyrion composes a letter on parchment, bearing no seal or signature. His words are carefully chosen, offering strategic advice, couched in the language of an anonymous well-wisher. He writes of King's Landing's defenses, of potential allies and enemies, of the mistakes previous Targaryen conquerors made when they underestimated the complexities of Westerosi politics. The letter finds its way to the Dragon Queen through a chain of intermediaries: a Pentoshi scribe, a Dothraki blood rider, a former Myrinese slave who serves as translator. By the time it reaches Daenerys, its origins are untraceable, its author invisible. But Tyrion's anonymity does not last long. 3 days after the dragon's arrival, he ventures into Pentos's great marketplace to purchase silks for the coming child. The morning crowd buzzes with excitement, traders from across Essos drawn by rumors of the Dragon Queen's presence. It is there, among the spice sellers and money changers, that Sir Jorah Mormont spots him. The knight stands beside a stall selling Myrish lace, his weathered face turning from casual observation to sharp recognition. Their eyes meet across 20 yards of crowded market, and Tyrion feels his blood turn to ice. Jorah's hand moves to his sword hilt as he begins pushing through the throng. "Run!" Tyrion hisses to Shae, but she cannot move quickly in her condition. They retreat toward the manse as fast as her pregnancy allows, Jorah's pursuit relentless behind them. The knight calls out in his northern accent, drawing curious stares from Pentoshi merchants. "Tyrion Lannister, in the name of Queen Daenerys, I would have words with you." They reach the relative safety of Illyrio's walls just as Shae doubles over in pain, clutching her belly with both hands. The stress and exertion have triggered something, and blood seeps through her silk dress. "The baby!" she gasps. Something is wrong. Maester Qyburn takes charge immediately, his cold efficiency a blessing in the chaos. Servants scramble to prepare a birthing chamber, while Tyrion paces outside like a caged wolf. The labor that should have come in 2 months begins now, brought on by fear and flight. "The child comes early but strong," Qyburn reports during a brief emergence from the chamber. "Your lady shows great courage, my lord. But the birth will be difficult." For 6 hours, Shae's cries echo through the manse, while dragons circle overhead. Tyrion cannot eat, cannot rest, can only listen to her suffer, and know that his presence in Pentos has caused this crisis. If they had fled to Yitai or the Summer Isles, if he had not been so determined to play the Game of Thrones from exile. Finally, as the sun sets red over the narrow sea, a different cry pierces the air. High and clear and unmistakably alive, the voice of his son announces his arrival to the world. "A healthy boy," Qyburn declares, emerging with a small bundle wrapped in silk. Smaller than full term, but perfectly formed. His lungs are strong, as you can hear. Tyrion takes his son with trembling hands, marveling at the tiny fingers and perfect features. The child has Shae's dark hair, but his own mismatched eyes, one green and one black. He is beautiful in a way that takes Tyrion's breath away. "What will you call him?" Qyburn asks. "Titus," Tyrion says without hesitation, honoring his grandfather who showed him kindness when few others would. "Titus. Hill." He pauses, then corrects himself. "Titus of Pentos. He belongs to no great house, answers to no lord but himself." Shae recovers slowly, but her smile when she holds their son lights the room brighter than any candle. They name him in the Pentoshi fashion, claiming no hereditary titles, no ancient bloodlines. He is simply their child, free from the moment of his first breath. But freedom proves fragile when power knocks at the door. The next morning brings unexpected visitors. A Dothraki blood rider arrives at the manse, bearing the 3-headed dragon banner. Behind him walks a figure that makes the assembled servants bow low. Daenerys Targaryen herself. She is younger than Tyrion expected, perhaps 19, with silver-gold hair braided in the Dothraki style and violet eyes that miss nothing. Her presence fills the courtyard despite her small stature, authority radiating from every gesture. 2 guards flank her, Jorah Mormont and a younger knight Tyrion doesn't recognize. "Lord Tyrion Lannister," she says, her voice carrying a slight accent from her years in exile. I find myself curious about the author of yesterday's letter. Anonymous counsel is often the most honest. Illyrio performs introductions with elaborate courtesy, but Daenerys' attention remains fixed on Tyrion. He approaches carefully, aware that one word from her could mean death or salvation. "Your Grace honors me," he says with a precise bow. "I hope my humble suggestions proved useful. Useful enough that I would hear more. Walk with me." They stroll through Illyrio's gardens while dragons cast shadows overhead. Daenerys speaks of her conquests in Slaver's Bay, of the challenges of ruling conquered cities, of her plans for Westeros. Tyrion listens carefully, offering occasional observations that demonstrate his knowledge without seeming presumptuous. "You are Hand of the King," she says suddenly. "You understand the Iron Throne's defenses better than any living man. Why would you share such knowledge with me?" "Because your Grace represents something Westeros has not seen in 3 centuries. The possibility of real change." Tyrion's words are carefully measured. "The current regime serves only those born to privilege. Your victories in Essos suggest different priorities." Pretty words from a Lannister. Your family destroyed mine. My family destroys everything it touches, Your Grace. That is why I am here, in exile, rather than serving the usurper on the throne I once defended. Tyrion meets her violet eyes directly. I offer my service not as a Lannister, but as a man who believes queens should rule through justice, not fear. Daenerys studies him for a long moment. I will consider your offer, Lord Tyrion. But first, there are other matters requiring attention. Word reaches me that your father sails this way with a fleet of golden cloaks. The news hits Tyrion like a physical blow. Tywin has found them at last, tracked them across the narrow sea through gold and determination. The safety they built in Pentos crumbles like sandcastles before the tide. How long do we have? He asks. 3 days, perhaps 4. Enough time to make choices. Daenerys' expression is unreadable. You could flee again, seek sanctuary in more distant lands, or you could stand and face what comes. And if I choose to stand, then you would serve a queen who protects her own. Her voice carries iron certainty. But service requires trust, Lord Tyrion, and trust must be earned. That evening, Tyrion sits beside Shae's bed, holding their newborn son while she recovers her strength. The choice before them seems impossible. Flee again with a newborn child, or place their trust in a teenage queen with dragons. What does your heart tell you? Shae asks, her voice still weak from the difficult birth. My heart tells me to run, to protect you and Tytos above all else. Tyrion traces the baby's perfect features with one finger. But my mind tells me that running will only delay the inevitable. Father will never stop hunting us, and Cersei's hatred burns brighter with each passing day. Then we make our stand here. We trust in dragons, Tyrion decides, and hope that fire burns hotter than Lannister gold. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, Tywin Lannister's flagship cuts through dark waters toward Pentos. The Lord of Casterly Rock stands on the forward deck, his green eyes fixed on the eastern horizon. Behind him follows a fleet of 30 vessels carrying gold cloaks and sellswords, enough force to take a city if necessary. My lord, Sir Kevan approaches cautiously. Perhaps we should send envoys first, negotiate with the Pentoshi magisters. There will be no negotiation. Tywin's voice cuts through the sea wind like steel. I come for my son and his whore. Anyone who stands between me and that goal will learn why Casterly Rock has never fallen. The hunt nears its end, and Pentos holds its breath as predator and prey prepare for final confrontation. Dragons soar overhead, while Lannister ships approach from the west, and in between, a dwarf holds his newborn son and prepares to gamble everything on the mercy of a teenage queen. The Lannister fleet arrives at dawn, 30 warships flying the Golden Lion as they fill Pentos' harbour like a plague of locusts. From the tallest minarets, the city watches Westerosi Marines march down gangplanks in perfect formation, their crimson cloaks bright as fresh blood in the morning sun. Tywin Lannister strides at their head, resplendent in a plate and mail that gleams like liquid gold. At 58, he moves with the confident authority of a man who has never known defeat, never bent the knee to any power save his own ambition. The Pentoshi dock workers scatter before him like mice before a lion. Behind him walks a figure that makes Tyrion's heart clench with conflicted emotion. Jaime follows his father with reluctant steps, his white cloak marking him as Kingsguard, but his face showing the torment of divided loyalties. Their eyes meet across the harbour, and Tyrion sees regret warring with duty in his brother's features. Magnificent, isn't he? Daenerys observes from the balcony of Illyrio's manse. The Dragon Queen has positioned herself to watch the confrontation, violet eyes calculating odds and outcomes. Your father commands presence, the way other men command armies. Presence built on terror, Tyrion replies, bouncing baby Tytos gently in his arms. The child sleeps peacefully, unaware that his grandfather has crossed the narrow sea to destroy his parents. But terror has its limitations, Your Grace. Ask the Rains of Castamere. The Rains of Castamere are dead. That rather proves your father's point. Tyrion cannot argue with that logic. Below them, Pentoshi magisters gather in nervous clusters, their silk robes rustling as they debate how to handle this crisis. Gold speaks loudly in the free cities, and Tywin Lannister carries more gold than most kingdoms. Within the hour, Magister Bellico arrives at the manse with a face pale as bone. Lord Tyrion, your father demands immediate audience with the ruling council. He brings terms for the city's consideration. Terms? Tyrion sets his son in Shae's arms, noting how her hands tremble slightly. He means ultimatums. Surrender you and the woman within 1 day, or he will consider Pentos in violation of ancient trade agreements. He speaks of blockade, of encouraging Braavosi expansion into our territory. Bellico wrings his hands like a nervous merchant. The council wavers, my lord. Some speak of honoring your sanctuary, but others calculate the cost of defying Tywin Lannister. Tyrion finishes grimly. I understand their position. No one grows rich by making enemies of the Iron Throne. Shae rises from her chair, still weak from childbirth but determined. We can still flee. Take ship for Yi Tai or the Summer Isles. Raise our son somewhere your father's gold cannot reach. Can we? Tyrion asks gently. He found us here, love. He will find us anywhere, given time, and I grow weary of running from the shadow of Casterly Rock. Then you mean to face him? I mean to end this, one way or another. Tyrion looks out at the dragons circling overhead, their shadows crossing and recrossing the city below. But not alone. That afternoon, the great hall of the Pentoshi ruling council becomes the stage for a confrontation 26 years in the making. Tywin enters with the bearing of a conqueror, his green eyes sweeping the assembled magisters like a wolf evaluating sheep. Gold cloaks line the walls, hands resting on sword hilts in silent threat. Raimi follows 2 steps behind, his face a mask of duty that cannot quite hide the turmoil beneath. He avoids looking toward the far end of the hall, where Tyrion stands beside Daenerys Targaryen and her retinue. Honored magisters, Tywin's voice fills the chamber with quiet authority. I come seeking the return of stolen property, a fugitive from royal justice and his accomplice, currently sheltered within your walls. Magister Varelos, elected speaker for the year, clears his throat nervously. Lord Tywin, Pentos has long honored the ancient right of sanctuary for political exiles. Your son and his lady have harmed no citizen of our city, conducted no crimes within our jurisdiction. They are criminals under Westerosi law. Harboring them constitutes an act of aggression against the Iron Throne. Tywin's tone remains level, conversational, but steel underlies every word. I am prepared to offer generous compensation for their return. Alternatively, Pentos may face the consequences of its choices. Threats, father? Tyrion steps forward, his voice carrying clearly across the hall. How thoroughly appropriate. You never did appreciate the art of negotiation. The hall falls silent as father and son face each other across 30 feet of marble floor. Tywin's expression does not change, but his hands clasp behind his back in the gesture Tyrion remembers from childhood lectures about duty and family honor. You will address me as Lord Tywin, or not at all. The words cut like winter wind. You forfeited the right to call me father when you chose exile over execution. I chose love over death, Tyrion replies calmly. Some might call that wisdom, rather than betrayal. Love. Tywin speaks the word like a curse. You destroyed our family's honor for a whore's affection. You made the name Lannister a mockery before the 7 kingdoms. And for what? A moment's pleasure with damaged goods? Shae steps forward before Tyrion can respond, carrying baby Tytos with regal dignity despite her simple dress. This damaged goods gave your son something you never could, my lord. Happiness. Tywin's gaze shifts to her, and for a moment his mask slips to reveal the cold fury beneath. The whore speaks. How quaint. His eyes fall on the child in her arms. Is that supposed to be my grandson? Some bastard whelp to carry on the Lannister name. His name is Titus of Pentos, Tyrion says, his own anger finally beginning to show. He carries no great house's burden, answers to no lord's command. He is free in ways you will never understand. Freedom? Tywin laughs, the sound harsh as breaking glass. You speak of freedom while hiding behind a mad girl's dragons. You speak of love while your wife remains captive in King's Landing, suffering for your betrayal. The blow hits home. Tyrion staggers slightly, guilt lancing through him at the mention of Sansa. In choosing his own happiness, he abandoned others to Cersei's mercy. You see, Tywin continues mercilessly, your precious freedom comes at others' expense. Your love costs innocents their peace. Come home, Tyrion. Face your punishment with honor, and I will ensure the girl and your bastard receive comfortable exile rather than painful death. Generous terms, Daenerys interjects, her young voice cutting through the tension like steel, but insufficient. All eyes turn to the Dragon Queen as she rises from her chair. At 19, she seems small among these powerful men, but authority radiates from her silver hair and violet eyes like heat from dragonfire. Your Grace, Tywin inclines his head slightly, acknowledging her rank if not her legitimacy. This matter concerns my family, not your conquest. Lord Tyrion serves in my council now. Threats against my advisors concern me greatly. Daenerys moves to stand beside Tyrion, her presence a shield of royal protection. Perhaps we might discuss alternative arrangements. There are no alternatives. My son returns to face Westerosi justice, or Pentos burns. Tywin's mask falls away completely now, revealing the iron will that has dominated the Seven Kingdoms for decades. Not even dragons will prevent me from reclaiming what is mine. And if your son chooses to renounce his birthright? Daenerys asks quietly. If he formally rejects all claim to Lannister lands and titles, what then becomes your justification for pursuit? Tywin's green eyes narrow. Tyrion Lannister is my son. He will always be my son, regardless of what names he claims or queens he serves. Then you force me to choose. Tyrion's voice grows stronger, more certain with each word. Between the family that has brought me nothing but pain and the family I have chosen for myself. He takes Shae's free hand, drawing strength from her touch. I choose love, Father. I choose freedom. I choose a future where my son will never know the fear I lived with every day at Casterly Rock. You choose treason. I choose life. Tyrion meets his father's gaze without flinching. I, Tyrion of House Lannister, do hereby renounce all claims to lands, titles, and inheritance of my birth. I reject the authority of Casterly Rock and all who serve it. I am no longer your son, Lord Tywin, and you are no longer my father. The words ring in the sudden silence, like the tolling of funeral bells. Tywin stands motionless, his face carved from stone, but his hands clench and unclench behind his back. So be it. His voice barely rises above a whisper. But know this, boy who was my son, renunciation changes nothing. You carry Lannister blood, and that blood answers to me whether you will it or not. Does it? Daenerys steps forward again, dragon's shadows falling across the hall, as if summoned by her will. Because I see only a free man who has chosen to serve a rightful queen, and those who serve me are under my protection. Jaime moves restlessly near the wall, his hand shifting toward his sword. The tension in the hall grows unbearable, violence crackling in the air like lightning before a storm. Your Grace, he says quietly, addressing Daenerys but looking at Tyrion. Perhaps there is another way. A trial by combat to determine the justice of these competing claims? Tywin's smile is predatory. An excellent suggestion. I name the mountain as my champion. And I name myself as mine, Daenerys replies coolly. Or rather, Drogon names himself. Shall we see how your champion fares against Dragonfire? The standoff stretches like a bowstring drawn to breaking. Father and son, dragons and lions, old power and new authority, all balanced on the edge of war. Then Tyrion laughs, the sound bright and unexpected in the dark tension. Enough. This ends now, not in blood but in choice. He turns to address the assembled magisters. Honored rulers of Pentos, I thank you for your hospitality, but I will not bring war to your peaceful city. I accept Queen Daenerys' offer of service and place myself under her protection. And I, Shae adds firmly, place my son under that same protection. Let no man say we cower behind walls and gold when we can stand behind justice and dragonfire. Tywin stares at them for a long moment, his green eyes unreadable. Finally, he nods once, sharply. Very well, you have made your choice, and I have made mine. But this is not finished. A lion may be patient, but he never forgets. He turns on his heel and strides from the hall, gold cloaks falling into step behind him. Jaime lingers for a heartbeat longer, his eyes meeting Tyrion's across the chamber. In them, Tyrion sees love, regret, and something that might be pride. Then his brother follows their father into the fading light, and Tyrion knows that his old life is truly dead. Whatever comes next will be built on the foundation of his own choices, not the weight of inherited expectation. In his arms, baby Tytos stirs and opens mismatched eyes to look up at his father. For the first time in his life, Tyrion sees a future unmarked by the shadow of Casterly Rock. The dragon's roar splits the morning air like the sound of the world ending. Drogon rises from the Great Pyramid, his black scales drinking sunlight as wings wider than war galleys cast death's shadow over Pentos harbour. Behind him soar Rhaegal and Viserion, bronze and cream, their cries echoing off the water like thunderclaps. Tywin Lannister stands on his flagship's deck, watching the beasts approach with the cold calculation that has won him 100 battles. But dragons are not sellswords or rebellious lords. They are fire made flesh, death given wings, and they answer to no gold or threats. Scorpions, he roars to his crew. Bring them down. The great crossbows mounted on his war galleys pivot skyward, their iron bolts gleaming like deadly stars. Crews work frantically to load and aim, but dragons move faster than any siege engine can track. Drogon falls like a thunderbolt, wings tucked tight against his massive frame. The first blast of dragonfire turns the leading galley into an inferno. Sailors scream as they dive, burning into the harbour, their cries lost in the roar of flames consuming wood and rope and flesh. The ship's scorpion melts like candle wax, its iron bolts exploding in the heat. Rhaegal strikes the second vessel, bronze fire washing over its deck like molten metal. Men cook in their armour, steel plates glowing red-hot as they die. The ship's masts topple, rigging blazing as it crashes into neighbouring vessels. "Return fire," Tywin commands, but his voice carries the edge of a man watching his certainties burn. The Lannister fleet scatters like startled fish, captains shouting contradictory orders as dragons wheel overhead for another pass. Meanwhile, in Pentos' streets, chaos erupts as news of the harbour battle spreads. Daenerys' unsullied march through the city in perfect formation, bronze spears gleaming as they take control of key positions. Their discipline contrasts sharply with the panic spreading among civilians. Tyrion races through narrow alleys, guiding terrified Pentoshi families away from the fighting. His knowledge of siege warfare serves him well now, identifying which buildings will collapse under dragonfire, which routes offer safe passage to the countryside. "This way," he shouts to a group of merchants carrying crying children. "The plaza is death if dragons come. Follow me to the eastern gate." Behind him, Shae runs with baby Tytos, clutched to her chest, her silk dress torn and dirt-stained, but her determination unwavering. The child wails at the noise and smoke, but his cries are lost in the greater symphony of battle. "How long can this last?" she gasps as they reach a temporary shelter in an abandoned warehouse. Until one side breaks, Tyrion replies grimly. Father has never retreated from anything in his life, but he's never faced dragons either. The sound of steel on steel echoes from the harbour district as Lannister gold cloaks meet unsullied spears. The Westerosi Marines fight with desperate courage, their training evident in every sword stroke and shield wall. But the Unsullied move like a single organism, their bronze spears finding gaps in crimson armour with mechanical precision. Jaime Lannister finds himself in the thick of the fighting, white cloak streaming behind him as he cuts through enemy ranks. His golden hand remains useless, but his sword arm has lost none of its deadly skill. Unsullied fall before his blade like wheat before the scythe, yet doubt gnaws at him with every strike. These men die for Daenerys Targaryen, a queen who offers hope of change, while he fights for his father's pride and his sister's ambition. When an unsullied captain raises his spear to strike, Jaime hesitates for a crucial heartbeat. The bronze point punches through his breastplate, drawing blood and sending him staggering. Only his Valyrian steel saves him as he parries the follow-up thrust and counterattacks with deadly precision. Sir Jaime! Jorah Mormont appears beside him, his own blade red with Lannister blood. Your queen commands your surrender. I serve no queen but Cersei. Jaime's sword weaves patterns of steel around him, holding the Bear Island Knight at bay. Stand aside, Mormont, and we need not kill each other. We both know how this ends, Jorah replies sadly. Your fleet burns, your father's gold cannot buy victory over Dragonfire. Yield now, with honor. Their blades meet in a shower of sparks, two knights of equal skill testing each other's resolve. Around them, the battle rages as dragons make another pass over the harbour, turning proud warships into floating pyres. Meanwhile, Tywin Lannister abandons his burning flagship for a smaller vessel, his green eyes blazing with fury that matches any dragonfire. To see his son standing with enemies, protected by a girl young enough to be his granddaughter, is an insult beyond bearing. Signal the reserves, he commands his surviving captains. All ships converge on the harbour. If we cannot have victory, we will have vengeance. But even as he speaks, Drogon circles back for another attack. The Black Dragon's roar seems to answer Tywin's challenge directly, promising death to any who oppose his mother's will. In the warehouse shelter, Tyrion watches smoke rise over the harbour and calculates odds with his sharp mind. The Lannister fleet is larger than anticipated, their resistance fiercer than expected. Victory is not assured, and defeat would mean death for everyone he loves. I need to reach Daenerys, he tells Shae. Coordinate our efforts before this becomes a slaughter. It's too dangerous. The streets are full of fighting men. More dangerous to let this continue without proper strategy. Tyrion kisses her forehead, then his son's tiny fingers. Keep Tytos safe. If I don't return, you will return. Her voice carries absolute certainty. You will return, because our son needs his father, and I need my lion. Tyrion slips from the warehouse into streets turned hellish by war. Smoke chokes the air while burning debris rains from the sky. Dragon shadows pass overhead like omens of doom, their riders unleashing precisely targeted destruction on Lannister positions. He reaches the Great Pyramid to find Daenerys standing on its highest balcony, violet eyes tracking the battle's progress with tactical precision. Her silver hair whips in the wind created by dragon wings, and authority radiates from her small frame like heat from forged steel. Your Grace, Tyrion calls, climbing the spiral stairs with burning lungs. The harbour is secure, but the street fighting continues. Your Unsullied are magnificent, but they cannot be everywhere at once. Suggestions? Her voice remains calm despite the chaos below. Threaten the leadership, not the soldiers. My father commands from the harbour's edge, likely that pavilion with Lannister banners. One dragon pass, precisely targeted. Killing Tywin Lannister would make you kinslayer twice over, Daenerys observes. Can you bear that burden? Tyrion stares at the distant pavilion where his father coordinates the desperate defense. The man who made his childhood a misery, who sentenced him to death, who crossed the narrow sea to destroy his happiness. Yet still his father, the lion who shaped him through pain and dismissal. "I can bear it," he says finally. "The question is whether you can trust me afterward." Daenerys studies his face for a long moment, then whistles sharply. Drogon responds to the sound, banking toward the pyramid with fluid grace. The dragon settles on the platform beside them, his massive head turning to regard Tyrion with intelligent black eyes. "Tell him," she says simply. Tyrion approaches the great beast carefully, marveling at scales harder than steel, at the furnace heat radiating from within. When he speaks, his voice carries the weight of final choice. "Dracarys, the pavilion with golden banners. Dracarys." Drogon launches himself skyward with a roar that shakes the pyramid's stones. Tyrion watches the black dragon streak toward the harbor, carrying his father's doom on wings of fire. But even as Drogon begins his dive, disaster strikes from an unexpected quarter. Jorah Mormont, fighting his way through the market district, spots a familiar figure fleeing with a crying infant. Recognition flashes in his bear-like features as he pursues Shae through twisting alleys. She runs with desperate strength, but childbirth has left her weakened, and Titus's weight slows her escape. Jorah's longer stride closes the distance between them with each passing moment. "My lady," he calls out, "I mean no harm, but the Queen requires assurance of Lord Tyrion's loyalty." Shae turns at bay like a cornered wolf, clutching her son protectively. "Stay away from us. Your child is not in danger, but his presence ensures his father's continued cooperation." Jorah's voice is gentle but implacable. "Come peacefully, and no one need be hurt." She backs against a dead-end wall, tears streaming down her face as Titus wails in terror. Above them, Drogon's shadow falls across the alley as the dragon descends toward his target. The explosion rocks all of Pentos as dragonfire consumes Tywin's command pavilion. The blast echoes off the harbor walls like the world's end, sending a column of black smoke spiraling toward the heavens. When the flames clear, nothing remains but melted gold and blackened stone. Tywin Lannister dies as he lived, standing upright, sword in hand, defying fate until the very end. But even dragonfire cannot erase the legacy of such a man, and his death solves nothing if his enemies hold what he loved most dear. In the alley, Tyrion rounds a corner to find Jorah holding his son, while Shae weeps helplessly beside them. The sight hits him like a physical blow, all his clever strategies reduced to ash in the face of such simple leverage. "So Jorah," he says carefully, "I believe we need to discuss terms." The knight's weathered face shows no triumph, only the weary sadness of a man who understands the cruel mathematics of power. "Indeed we do, my lord. Indeed we do." Above them, dragons circle in victory, while the harbor burns, and street fighting slowly dies away. The battle is won, but the war between love and loyalty, between family and freedom, continues in the hearts of those who survive. The age of dragons has returned to the world, and nothing will ever be the same. Smoke rises from the ruined harbor like incense to forgotten gods, the acrid smell of burned ships and dreams mingling with the salt breeze. Half the Lannister fleet lies broken on the water, masts jutting from the waves like the ribs of some great beast. The surviving vessels huddle near the harbor's edge, their golden banners torn and scorched. Tywin Lannister sits propped against silk cushions in a commandeered Pentoshi villa, his left arm bound in bloodied bandages. Dragonfire missed him by mere yards, but falling debris from his collapsing pavilion crushed his shoulder and left him pale with pain and blood loss. Yet his green eyes burn undimmed, calculating even in defeat. "My lord," Sir Kevan approaches cautiously. "The Dragon Queen requests parley. She holds the dwarf's woman and child." "Does she now?" Tywin's voice remains steady, despite his injuries. And what terms does this girl queen propose? Exchange of prisoners. Lord Tyrion's family for safe passage of our remaining forces back to Westeros. Kevin hesitates before adding, she also demands formal recognition of her claim to the Iron Throne. Tywin's laugh is sharp as breaking glass. Recognition from me? I think Dragonfire has addled her wits along with mine. He struggles to sit straighter, wincing at the pain. But tell me, nephew, how goes the battle in the city? Ended, my lord. The Unsullied hold all key positions. Our men have surrendered or fled. Kevin's voice carries the weight of absolute defeat. We are at her mercy. No. Tywin's eyes narrow. We are at my son's mercy. There is a difference. Meanwhile, in the great pyramid's throne chamber, Tyrion paces before Daenerys like a caged wolf. The Dragon Queen sits upon a chair carved from black stone, her violet eyes following his movement with calculating interest. Behind her stand Jorah Mormont and her other advisers, their faces grave in the aftermath of victory. Your Grace, my family's safety must be guaranteed before any negotiations begin, Tyrion says, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion. I cannot serve you effectively while my son and wife remain prisoners. They are guests, not prisoners, Daenerys corrects gently. Well-treated guests whose comfort depends entirely on their husband and father's choices. She leans forward slightly. Your father lies wounded, but alive in the harbour district. He requests parley. I find myself curious what terms the great Tywin Lannister might offer. None worth hearing, Tyrion replies immediately. He will promise anything to escape with his life, then break every vow once he reaches Westeros. That is his nature. Perhaps. But negotiations serve purposes beyond their outcomes. They reveal character, create opportunities, establish precedents. Daenerys rises from her chair with fluid grace. You will accompany me to this meeting, Lord Tyrion, as my advisor and representative. Your Grace, I cannot face him again so soon. The wounds are too fresh, the anger too raw. You can and you will, because your son's future depends on how this conversation unfolds. Her voice carries gentle steel. Besides, I require your knowledge of Westerosi politics and your father's tactics. Who better to advise me in dealing with Tywin Lannister than his own son? An hour later, they gather in the villa's main hall, where Tywin holds court from his makeshift sickbed. The Lord of Casterly Rock has managed to don fresh clothes despite his injuries, golden doublet unmarked by battle and blood. Only the pallor of his skin and the careful way he holds his left arm betray his condition. Daenerys enters with measured steps, her silver hair braided with small bells that chime softly as she moves. Tyrion follows at her right hand, his face a mask of diplomatic calm that conceals the turmoil beneath. The symbolism is clear to all who witness it. The dwarf who was cast out now stands as advisor to a queen. Lord Tywin, Daenerys inclines her head slightly. I trust your wounds are healing well? Well enough to continue serving the realm, Your Grace. His voice carries its usual authority, despite his weakened state. I understand congratulations are in order. Your dragons proved most persuasive in their arguments. They speak plainly, she agrees, as do I. You have lost this battle, my lord. Your fleet is broken, your army scattered, your position untenable. I offer you the chance to salvage something from this defeat. How generous, and what salvage do you propose? Safe passage to Westeros for you and your surviving men. Recognition of my claim to the Iron Throne. An end to the bounties on my advisor's head. Daenerys moves closer, her young face serious. In exchange, I will not pursue my dragon's appetite for Lannister gold. Tywin's eyes shift to Tyrion, studying his youngest son with the intensity of a master tactician evaluating an enemy's weaknesses. And my son? What becomes of the kinslayer who chose foreign queens over family duty? Tyrion Lannister renounced his birth name and inheritance yesterday. Daenerys replies coolly. The man before you is my hand, sworn to my service and under my protection. His past matters less than his future contributions. The words hit like hammer blows. Tywin's mask slips for just a moment, revealing the depth of his fury at seeing his legacy rejected so completely. When he speaks again, his voice carries winter's chill. Hand of the Queen. How perfectly appropriate. The dwarf always did have delusions of competence. His gaze locks with Tyrion's. Tell me, boy, was the whore's cunt worth destroying everything our family built? That whore is my wife, Tyrion says quietly, and the mother of my son. She is worth more than all the gold in Casterly Rock. He steps forward, his mismatched eyes blazing. But you would not understand that, would you, father? Love was always foreign to your calculations. Love! Tywin spits the word like poison. Love is the death of duty, the enemy of honor, the luxury of fools. Your precious love has made you a traitor to everything you once claimed to serve. No, Tyrion shakes his head slowly. Love made me free. Free to choose my own path, serve my own conscience, protect those who matter more than ancient names carved on tombstones. Meanwhile, ravens fly westward across the narrow sea, carrying news that will shake the seven kingdoms to their foundations. The first reaches King's Landing as the sun sets red over the black water, its black wings cutting through the dying light like an omen of change. Queen Cersei tears open the message with trembling fingers, her green eyes scanning the words with growing horror. Tywin wounded, fleet destroyed, dragons triumphant, Tyrion alive and serving the Targaryen pretender. Impossible, she whispers, then screams it loud enough to wake the castle. Impossible! The small council chamber erupts into chaos as the news spreads. Grand Maester Pycelle fumbles with his chains, muttering prayers to the seven. Lord Mace Tyrell goes pale as parchment, calculating how quickly he can withdraw his support from a losing cause. 8-year-old King Tommen sits on the Iron Throne like a sparrow among eagles, watching his mother pace the throne room with wild eyes and wilder hair. Her rage fills the hall like poison gas, choking reason and wisdom from all who breathe it. Ready the royal fleet, she commands. Send ravens to every lord in Westeros. The Pretender and her dragons burn Lannister ships in foreign waters while hiding behind my traitor brother. This means war. Your Grace, Lord Kevin tries to interject from his place at the table. Perhaps we should await more complete reports before. More reports? Cersei whirls on him like a lioness scenting prey. My father lies wounded, my fleets burn, and dragons soar over the narrow sea for the first time in a century. What more do you need to see the threat before us? Tommen shifts uncomfortably on the Iron Throne, its twisted metal digging into his small frame. Mother, perhaps we could send envoys first? Try to negotiate. Negotiate? Cersei's laugh is brittle as old glass. With the girl who murdered her own brother? With the dwarf who killed his king? There can be no negotiation with such creatures, only destruction. Back in Pentos, the parley continues as evening shadows lengthen across the villa's hall. Tywin has agreed to the basic terms, safe passage for his surviving forces in exchange for an end to hostilities. But negotiations drag on over details and conditions. The bounties remain a problem, Daenerys observes. I will not have my hand looking over his shoulder for assassins while he serves the realm. The realm? Tywin's voice drips with contempt. Is that what you call this foreign adventure? This dragon-backed invasion of sovereign Westeros? I call it coming home, she replies simply. Reclaiming what was stolen from my family by usurpers and murderers. Your daughter sits upon my throne, wearing my crown, ruling my people. That ends now. As negotiations continue, Jorah Mormont enters with a small party of unsullied escorts. Between them walks Shae, carrying baby Tytos in her arms. The sight of his family safe and unharmed floods Tyrion with relief, so intense his knees nearly buckle. My love, he breathes, crossing to embrace them both. Shae melts into his arms while their son gurgles softly, reaching tiny fingers toward his father's face. "Are you hurt? Did they?" "We are well," Shae assures him. "Ser Jorah was courteous, even kind. But I feared—" Her voice breaks slightly. "I feared we might never see you again." Tywin watches this reunion with eyes like winter storms, his face revealing nothing of the emotions warring beneath its surface. When he speaks, his voice carries the weight of final judgment. So, the whore and her bastard return to their protector. How touching. He struggles to rise from his cushions, wincing as the movement sends fresh pain through his wounded shoulder. "Very well, Dragon Queen. We have our terms. My ships depart on tomorrow's tide." "Not all your ships," Daenerys corrects. "Sir Jaime remains here, of his own choosing, as do several of your knights who have sworn new oaths to my service." The revelation hits Tywin like a physical blow. His eldest son, his heir, his greatest pride, choosing exile over family loyalty. For a moment, the great lord's composure cracks completely. "Jaime." The name emerges as barely a whisper. "Brother," Tyrion calls softly. Jaime steps from the shadows by the wall, his white cloak exchanged for simple traveling clothes. The golden hand still gleams at his wrist, but his bearing shows new purpose. "I choose my own path now, father," Jaime says, his voice steady despite the pain in his green eyes. "As Tyrion chose his. The name Lannister has become a chain around our necks. It is time to break it." Tywin stares at his sons, both his sons, standing together in defiance of everything he built and believed. His legacy crumbles before his eyes like sand castles before the tide. "Then I have no sons," he says finally. "The line of Lannister ends with me." "No, father," Tyrion replies gently, lifting baby Tytos so his grandfather can see the child's mismatched eyes. "It begins with him. Free of your shadow, free of your mistakes, free to choose his own destiny." That evening, as Tywin's defeated fleet prepares for departure, bonfires burn in Pentus's great square. Lannister banners feed the flames, golden lions reduced to ash and memory. Citizens gather to watch the spectacle, their voices raised in celebration of their Dragon Queen's victory. Daenerys stands on the Great Pyramid's balcony, watching the fires burn while her dragons circle overhead. Beside her, Tyrion holds his son and wife close, finally beginning to believe in their safety. "Hand of the Queen," she says suddenly. "The title suits you, Lord Tyrion. Or do you prefer another form of address?" "Tyrion will suffice, Your Grace. I have finished with lordships and grand titles." He pauses, studying her profile in the firelight. "But if I am to be your hand, we should discuss your plans for Westeros. The realm will not welcome dragons gladly." "No," she agrees, "but they will learn to accept them, as they will learn to accept justice over privilege, merit over birthright, hope over fear." She turns to face him fully. "We have work to do, my friend. The real war has only just begun." In the harbor below, Tywin Lannister's ship catches the tide and turns westward toward home. The Lord of Casterly Rock stands at the stern, watching Pentos recede into darkness while dragons soar against the stars. His sons remain behind, his legacy broken, his pride in ashes. But defeat has only sharpened his determination. The Game of Thrones continues, and Tywin Lannister has never accepted losing. The War Council meets at dawn in the Great Pyramid's highest chamber, where maps of Westeros cover every surface like parchment snow. Daenerys stands before the largest chart, her violet eyes tracing the coastline from dawn to the wall, while dragons circle outside the windows. The scent of sea salt and possibility fills the air. Tyrion approaches the table, carrying scrolls of his own creation, detailed sketches of King's Landing's defenses drawn from memory and bitter experience. His knowledge of every secret passage, every weak point, every hidden sally port could mean the difference between conquest and catastrophe. "Your Grace," he begins, unrolling a map of the Red Keep's interior. The fortress appears impregnable from the water, but every castle has its vulnerabilities. The dragon pits, for instance. Their entrances connect to tunnels that run beneath the entire complex. Daenerys studies the intricate drawings with calculating interest. How many men could move through such passages? A few hundred at most, but strategically placed, they could open the gates for your main force. Tyrion's finger traces routes through the underground maze. The real challenge lies not in taking the castle, but in holding it. The common folk remember your father's reign, your grace. They will need convincing that dragons bring liberation, not destruction. And how do you suggest we provide such convincing? Slowly, deliberately. We begin with Dragonstone. Tyrion moves to a different map, this one showing the Targaryen ancestral seat rising from Blackwater Bay. Stannis Baratheon abandoned it after his defeat at the Blackwater. The castle sits empty, waiting for its rightful owners to reclaim it. Jorah Mormont nods approvingly from his position beside the window. Dragonstone commands the approach to King's Landing. Properly fortified, it becomes an unassailable base for future operations. More than that, Tyrion continues, his voice growing more animated as strategy unfolds in his mind. It sends a message. The dragons have returned to their ancient home. The Targaryen dynasty rises again. Let that news spread through the taverns and marketplaces while we gather strength for the final assault. Shae enters carrying baby Titus, now 3 months old and alert to the world around him. The child reaches toward the colorful maps with tiny fingers, gurgling contentedly as his mother settles into a chair near the wall. Her presence reminds them all what they risk in this enterprise, not just crowns and kingdoms, but the future itself. The fleet, Daenerys says, turning to practical matters. How many ships will we need? For the initial landing, perhaps 50 vessels, enough to transport 2,000 unsullied and provisions for a month-long siege. Tyrion calculates quickly, his mind working through logistics with practiced efficiency. But for a sustained campaign against the Iron Throne, we'll need 3 times that number. Ships, men, gold, supplies. Conquest requires resources on a scale that would bankrupt lesser kingdoms. Fortune favors us in that regard. The Pentoshi Magisters have proven remarkably generous with their support, particularly after witnessing what dragons can accomplish. Daenerys' smile carries dangerous charm. Gold flows more freely when backed by the threat of fire. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, Tywin Lannister's ship limps into King's Landing harbour like a wounded animal seeking its den. The Lord of Casterly Rock emerges from his cabin, supported by his personal guard, his left arm still bound and his face grey with pain and exhaustion. The voyage has taken its toll on his injured body, but his will remains unbroken. Word of his return spreads through the Red Keep faster than wildfire. Servants whisper of defeat and dragons, of sons turned traitor, and fleets burned to ash. By the time Tywin's litter reaches the Tower of the Hand, half the court knows that the most powerful man in Westeros has tasted defeat for the first time in his life. Cersei waits in his solar with wine and worried fury, her green eyes bright with unshed tears and barely controlled rage. She has aged in the week since his departure, stress and paranoia etching new lines around her eyes. "Father," she breathes, rushing to embrace him as he enters. "When the ravens came, I thought that I was dead." Tywin settles carefully into his chair, wincing as the movement aggravates his injuries. "Not yet, daughter. Though your brothers seem determined to bury the family name while I still draw breath. Jaime stayed with them, with the Targaryen girl. He made his choice, as did Tyrion." Tywin's voice carries the weight of winter mountains. "They are dead to me now, dead to our house. We must look elsewhere for heirs to carry our legacy forward." Cersei's face twists with emotions too complex to name. Relief at her father's survival, wars with rage at her brother's betrayal, while beneath it all lurks the terrible knowledge that their enemies now possess dragons. "The realm grows restless in your absence," she reports, pouring wine with hands that tremble slightly. "Riots in Flea Bottom, grain shortages in the Reach, and everywhere the small folk whisper of dragon sightings and Targaryen restoration. Let them whisper. Words are wind, and dragons are flesh." Tywin accepts the wine, but barely sips it, his mind already turning to defensive strategies. Double the city watch. Recall Lord Paxter's fleet from the Summer Isles. Send ravens to every Lord Paramount demanding immediate levies. And if they refuse? If they choose to support the Targaryen girl? Then they will learn why House Lannister has never fallen. His green eyes glitter with cold fire. "I may have lost a battle, daughter, but I have not lost the war. Dragons burn hot, but they die like any beast when the right weapons find their mark." Meanwhile, far to the north at Castle Black, Lord Commander Jon Snow reads reports from ranging parties with growing dread. The messages speak of abandoned wildling villages, of strange lights dancing in the darkness beyond the wall, of an unnatural cold that kills horses and freezes water even in summer. "The dead walk," he tells Samwell Tarly, as they stand atop the wall, watching the haunted forest stretch endlessly northward. "The old stories speak true, Sam. The others have returned, and we are not ready for them." "Perhaps we should send word south," Sam suggests nervously. "Warn King's Landing of the threat approaching from beyond the wall." Jon's laugh is bitter as winter wind. "What would they care? The lords of Westeros fight over their iron chair, while true darkness gathers strength in the north. They would dismiss our warnings as the ravings of frightened crows." "Not all of them. There are still good men in the south, men who remember their oaths and honor." That evening, Jon composes a letter by candlelight in his chambers, choosing his words with careful precision. The message is brief but urgent, warning of ancient enemies stirring beyond the wall, and the need for unity against a threat greater than any political ambition. When he finishes, he addresses the parchment to Tyrion Lannister, last known location Pentos. The dwarf may be a kingslayer and kinslayer, but Jon remembers kindness during his visit to Winterfell years ago. If anyone in the south might listen to reason, it would be Ned Stark's friend. Back in Pentos, Tyrion receives the raven 3 days later, breaking the seal with curious fingers. As he reads Jon's warning of White Walkers and ancient enemies, his blood turns to ice water in his veins. "Your Grace," he calls to Daenerys, who sits playing with baby Tytos while Shae embroiders nearby. "We have received troubling news from the north." She takes the letter, reading it with growing concern. "White Walkers? I thought such creatures were legends, stories to frighten children." "Many things were legends until dragons returned to the world," Tyrion reminds her. "If Lord Commander Snow speaks truly, then our invasion plans face a complication we never anticipated." "How so?" "Because conquering a kingdom means nothing if that kingdom falls to the dead within a year." Tyrion begins pacing, his mind racing through implications and possibilities. "We may need to reconsider our timeline, our priorities, perhaps our entire strategy." Shae looks up from her needlework, concern creasing her brow. "Does this change our plans to sail for Dragonstone?" "It changes everything," Tyrion admits, "or perhaps nothing. We need more information before making such momentous decisions." He turns back to Daenerys. "Your Grace, might I suggest a response to Lord Snow? An offer of alliance against this greater threat?" "Alliance with the Night's Watch. Alliance with anyone who stands against the dead." Tyrion's voice grows more urgent. "Your dragons are weapons of fire, Your Grace. Against creatures of ice and darkness, they may prove more valuable than any army." That night, as Pentos sleeps beneath dragon-shadowed skies, the War Council reconvenes to discuss this new intelligence. Maps of the North join those of the South, and strategic planning expands to encompass threats, both political and supernatural. The wall is said to be 700 feet high and imbued with ancient magic, Jorah observes, studying the charts. If it falls, how long before these White Walkers reach King's Landing? Months, perhaps a year if they move slowly, Tyrion calculates. But speed may be their ally if the northern lords flee south instead of standing firm. Panic could collapse organized resistance faster than any army. Daenerys stares at the maps with troubled eyes, violet depths reflecting candlelight like distant stars. So we face a choice. Move quickly to claim the Iron Throne before this threat materializes, or delay our invasion to address the greater danger first. There may be a third option, Tyrion suggests carefully. Coordinate our invasion with the threat's approach. Let fear of the dead drive the living into our arms. A queen who stands against darkness will find more supporters than one who merely seeks power. You suggest we use the White Walkers as unwitting allies? I suggest we position ourselves as saviors rather than conquerors. The difference could determine whether we rule over grateful subjects or reluctant slaves. Outside the windows, dragons circle in the starlight while ships gather in the harbor below. The invasion fleet grows daily as vessels arrive from across the free cities, their holds heavy with weapons and supplies. Soon they will carry dragons back to Westeros, but whether as liberators or conquerors remains to be decided. In her chambers, Shae rocks baby Tytos to sleep, while worry gnaws at her heart. The child knows nothing of the dangers gathering around him, innocent of the wars and terrors that may shape his future. She kisses his forehead and whispers prayers to gods, both old and new, begging for a world where her son might grow up in peace. But peace seems as distant as the stars outside her window, and the winds of war blow ever stronger across the narrow sea. 3 great shadows fall across Blackwater Bay as the dragons soar toward their ancient home. Drogon leads the formation, his black wings cutting through morning mist, while Rhaegal and Viserion follow like bronze and ivory stars against the grey sky. Below them, 100 ships fly the 3-headed dragon banner as they approach the towering spires of Dragonstone. Tyrion stands on the flagship's deck, salt spray stinging his face as he watches the castle grow larger with each passing moment. The fortress of his ancestors rises from volcanic rock like something carved from the world's bones, its dragon-shaped towers twisted and ancient beyond memory. He has never seen it before. Yet something in his blood recognizes this place as home. Magnificent, Daenerys breathes beside him, her violet eyes reflecting the castle's dark majesty. My family ruled from those halls for 3 centuries. Dragons were born in those chambers, kings crowned in those courts. And now they return, Tyrion observes, noting the empty battlements and silent towers. Stannis' banners no longer fly from the walls. The castle waits for its rightful owners to reclaim it. The invasion force spreads across the bay like a golden tide, unsullied transports flanked by war galleys bristling with scorpions and catapults, but their weapons prove unnecessary. Dragonstone stands empty as a tomb, abandoned by its garrison when Stannis fell at the Blackwater years ago. Dragon roars echo off the castle walls as Drogon settles on the great tower's peak, claws scoring ancient stone worn smooth by centuries of salt wind. Rhaegal and Viserion claim the lesser towers, their cries proclaiming the return of fire and blood to this ancient seat of power. The great gates open without siege or assault, rusted chains snapping under their own weight. Daenerys leads her forces into courtyards where Targaryen kings once walked, her footsteps echoing in halls that have known only silence for too long. Tyrion follows, but his attention focuses inward as memories surface unbidden. Not his own memories, but inherited ones. Stories his grandfather told of dragons and kings, of the last Targaryen court, before Robert's rebellion scattered them to the winds. Walking these halls feels like stepping into a half-remembered dream. The throne room, he murmurs, approaching massive doors carved with dragons in flight. Your ancestors held court here for 300 years. Every great house sent representatives to bend the knee before the dragon throne. And they will again, Daenerys replies with quiet certainty. But first, we must remind them what power looks like. Within hours of securing the castle, ravens fly from Dragonstone's rookery, carrying identical messages to every great house in Westeros. The words are simple, but unmistakable. Daenerys Stormborn has returned to reclaim her birthright. Bend the knee or face the consequences. The responses arrive sporadically over the following days. Some lords pledge immediate allegiance, particularly those who suffered under Lannister rule. Others temporize, seeking advantage in chaos. But many simply ignore the summons, trusting in stone walls and ancient loyalties to protect them from dragon fire. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, death comes for Tywin Lannister, not with sword or poison, but with the slow certainty of a body pushed beyond its limits. The infection in his wounded shoulder has spread despite the Maester's efforts, fever burning through him like wildfire while his strength ebbs with each labored breath. He lies in his great bed in the Tower of the Hand, surrounded by the tapestries and trophies of a lifetime spent conquering. But conquest means nothing to a dying man, and power feels as ephemeral as morning mist when death approaches on silent feet. "Father," Cersei whispers, clutching his pale hand with desperate fingers. "The Masters say, they say if the fever breaks, the fever will not break." Tywin's voice emerges as barely a whisper, but his green eyes burn undimmed by approaching death. "Listen to me, daughter. Our enemies gather strength while I lie helpless. You must hold the realm together until what? Until my brothers return from their treason. Until dragons burn our cities while I watch helplessly." Tears streak Cersei's face, but her voice carries the edge of hysteria. "They are all gone, father. Jaime, Tyrion, even you. I am alone with enemies at every door." "Not alone." Tywin struggles to raise his head, using his last reserves of strength to speak clearly. "You have Tommen, you have the crown, you have gold." His eyes fix on hers with dying intensity. "Use them. Trust no one completely. Forgive no slight. Show no weakness. That is how lions survive." "And if I cannot? If the dragons come and I fall?" Tywin's smile is sharp as a blade, even on his deathbed. "Then make them pay such a price for victory that songs will remember your defiance long after their line ends." His hand tightens on hers one final time. "Promise me." "I promise, father. I swear it by all the gods." Tywin Lannister closes his eyes and dies as he lived, calculating advantage even with his final breath. The Lord of Casterly Rock, the hand who shaped kingdoms and destroyed dynasties, passes into history, leaving only echoes of his terrible will. Cersei's scream, when the Maesters confirm his death, can be heard throughout the Red Keep, a sound of grief and fury that chills the blood of all who hear it. Guards exchange nervous glances as their queen's sanity finally snaps under the weight of loss and fear. Young King Tommen finds her hours later, rocking beside his grandfather's cooling corpse while whispering promises of vengeance to the dead. At 9 years old, he understands death, but not the madness it can bring to the living. "Mother," he says gently, approaching like one might approach a wounded animal, "the small council waits for your commands." "Commands?" Cersei laughs, the sound bright and brittle as breaking glass. "What commands can I give? Dragons fly toward our city, while my father lies dead, and my brothers serve our enemies. Tell me, sweet son, what commands would you give?" Tommen's young face shows wisdom beyond his years, as he kneels beside his mother's chair. "I would call for help. Send ravens to Lord Tyrell, to the Martells, to anyone who might stand with us against the dragons." "Help!" Cersei tastes the word like poison. Yes, perhaps it is time to call for help. Time to see which lords remember their oaths when dragonfire lights the sky. But even as ravens fly from King's Landing, carrying desperate pleas for aid, Daenerys' forces march inland from Dragonstone. Jaime leads the vanguard, his knowledge of local terrain guiding unsullied through roads he travelled as a boy. The irony is not lost on him. The Kingsguard, who once protected the Iron Throne, now advances to place it under new management. The first serious resistance comes at a crossroads village 20 miles from the capital, where a force of Lannister loyalists makes a desperate stand. At their head rides Sir Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides, his massive frame encased in plate armor that gleams like silver in the afternoon sun. "Brother!" The mountain's voice booms across the field as he spots Jaime among the enemy ranks. "I had heard you turned traitor, but seeing it brings such disappointment." Jaime urges his horse forward, white cloak replaced by dragon-marked surcoat, but his bearing unchanged. "I serve a queen who frees slaves rather than making them, Clegane. Some might call that progress. I call it treason." The mountain draws his great sword, the massive blade catching sunlight like a fallen star. "But perhaps we can settle this the old way. Single combat. Winner takes the field." "As you wish." Jaime's own blade whispers from its sheath, Valyrian steel singing its deadly song. Around them, both armies draw back to form a circle, understanding that some conflicts require personal resolution. The mountain charges like an avalanche given form, his massive destrier's hooves shaking the earth while his sword cuts deadly arcs through the air. But Jaime has faced larger opponents before, and his speed serves him better than strength ever could. He sidesteps the initial rush, letting momentum carry his enemy past, while his blade finds gaps in armor joints. Blood spatters the ground as Valyrian steel bites deep, but the mountain's armor turns aside the most serious strikes. "Too slow, little knight," Gregor snarls, backhanding with his free hand. The blow catches Jaime across the chest, lifting him from his saddle to crash heavily in the dust. Only his armor saves him from broken ribs as he rolls away from the mountain's descending blade. "Not little," Jaime gasps, regaining his feet with practiced grace. "Just smarter." The duel continues for long minutes, steel ringing on steel, while two armies watch their champions test each other's resolve. The mountain's strength is legendary, but Jaime's skill has been honed by years of practice with his golden hand, adapting his fighting style to compensate for the loss. Finally, as Gregor's massive sword whistles overhead in another killing blow, Jaime steps inside his guard and drives his blade up through the gap between breastplate and gorget. Valyrian steel punches through muscle and bone to find the heart beneath, and the mountain that rides falls like a toppled tower. In the distance, watching from Dragonstone's highest tower through a Myrish lens, Tyrion sees his brother stand victorious over the monster that killed Prince Oberyn. Justice comes in many forms, but few are as satisfying as this. "It is done," he tells Daenerys, lowering the spyglass. "The road to King's Landing lies open." "Then we march at dawn," she replies, violet eyes reflecting the setting sun. "It is time to claim my throne." That night, as dragons circle overhead and armies prepare for the final advance, Tyrion composes a letter to his nephew on the Iron Throne. The words come carefully, offering terms that might spare the city from dragonfire if wisdom prevails over pride. But wisdom has been in short supply in King's Landing of late, and Tyrion suspects his letter will find little welcome in a court ruled by grief and madness. Still, he must try. Even in war, some things are worth preserving. The final battle for Westeros approaches with the inevitability of dawn, and with it the end of an age that began with Robert's rebellion. Dragons have returned to the world, and nothing will ever be the same. The dragons descend on King's Landing like the wrath of ancient gods, their shadows falling across walls that have stood for 3 centuries. Drogon leads the assault, his black form silhouetted against the dawn sky as dragon fire blossoms along the battlements. Defenders scream and scatter as stone melts like candle wax beneath the fury of his breath. Rhaegal and Viserion follow, bronze and cream death spiraling around the Red Keep's towers while their roars echo off the harbour waters. But their flames strike with precision, targeting only military positions while leaving the common quarters untouched. Daenerys has learned the lessons of Meereen well. Conquest means nothing if it rules over ashes and bones. In the streets below, Tyrion leads a column of unsullied through the city he knows better than his own soul. Every alley and avenue holds memories from his youth. Every corner reminds him of the boy who once walked these streets in his father's shadow. Now he returns as liberator rather than oppressor, though the irony tastes bitter on his tongue. "Cobbler's Square," he calls to the unsullied captain, marching beside him. "Secure the granaries and protect the civilians. The real fighting will be at the Red Keep, but hungry people make dangerous enemies." Bronze spears gleam as disciplined soldiers spread through the maze of streets, their training evident in every measured step. They encounter little resistance from the city watch. Most gold cloaks have fled or surrendered rather than face dragons with nothing but steel and courage. But not all of King's Landing submits easily. Lannister loyalists have barricaded themselves in strong points throughout the city, forcing the Unsullied to fight for every street and square. The sound of steel on bronze echoes between the buildings as two armies clash in the shadow of soaring dragons. "My lord," an unsullied sergeant approaches Tyrion with blood on his bronze mask. "We found civilians trapped in a collapsed building. Your orders?" "Save them," Tyrion replies without hesitation. "All of them. That's why we're here." As his soldiers work to free trapped citizens from rubble and flame, Tyrion feels the weight of his choices settling around him like armor. He has brought war to his birth city, unleashed dragons against walls he once called home. But freedom has always carried a price, and some costs must be paid regardless of personal pain. Meanwhile, in the Red Keep's throne room, Queen Cersei stands before the Iron Throne like a lioness at bay. Her golden hair hangs in wild tangles, her green eyes bright with madness and desperate purpose. Around her cluster, the last loyal Kingsguard, their white cloaks stained with ash and blood. "Your Grace," Sir Meryn Trant reports, his voice trembling with fear and exhaustion. "The dragons have breached the outer walls. The city falls street by street. We cannot hold them much longer." "Cannot? Or will not?" Cersei's voice carries the edge of hysteria. "Are you telling me that the greatest fortress in Westeros falls to a girl barely 20 and her pet monsters?" "The girl commands dragons, Your Grace. Against such creatures, stone walls mean little." Cersei laughs, the sound sharp as a breaking glass echoing in the vast chamber. "Dragons. Yes, they are magnificent, aren't they? Fire made flesh, death given wings." Her eyes fix on something beyond the immediate moment, seeing possibilities that chill the blood. "But dragons burn everything, don't they? Even their riders, if the fire grows hot enough." She turns toward a hidden alcove where King Tommen sits huddled on a chair too large for his small frame. At 9 years old, he understands that his world is ending, but not what horrors his mother contemplates to prevent it. "Mother," he whispers, "perhaps we should surrender. Uncle Tyrion was always kind to me. He might—" "Your uncle is a kinslayer and a traitor," Cersei snaps, advancing on her son with wild eyes. "He serves our enemies now, boy. He would see you dead before allowing you to keep what is rightfully yours. But the people, Mother, the fighting in the city, the people are sheep. They follow whoever holds the sharpest sword." Cersei kneels before her son, taking his small hands in her trembling ones. "But there is another way, sweet boy, a way to deny our enemies their victory, even in defeat." She produces a small crystal vial from her gown, its contents glowing green as poisoned starlight. Wildfire, enough to kill 100 men, more than enough to end 2 lives that have become inconvenient to her desperate plans. "We go together," she whispers, her voice gentle as a lullaby. Like the song says, the king and queen departed, hand in hand, to the undying lands where sorrow ends. Tommen stares at the vial with eyes too old for his young face. Will it hurt? Only for a moment, and then peace forever. But before she can remove the stopper, the throne room doors explode inward as Unsullied pour through in perfect formation. At their head stride Tyrion and Jaime, both breathing hard from their race through burning corridors. "Sister," Jaime's voice cuts across the vast chamber like a blade. "Put down the poison. This ends now." Cersei whirls to face them, clutching the wildfire vial against her chest. "Brothers, how perfectly fitting that you should witness this final act." Her smile is bright as madness itself. "Did you really think I would let you take everything? Let you parade us through the streets like conquered animals? No one dies today if you surrender peacefully," Tyrion says, approaching slowly with his hands visible and empty. "Your son can live, Cersei. He can have a future away from all this madness." Future? What future waits for a deposed king? Death or exile? Humiliation or assassination? Her grip tightens on the vial. Better to die as royalty than live as beggars. "Tommen is just a boy," Jaime pleads, his voice heavy with emotion. "Whatever you think of us, he doesn't deserve to pay for our family's sins. He is my son, my choice to make." No. The voice that speaks carries absolute authority, stopping all movement in the throne room. Daenerys Targaryen enters, flanked by her Queen's Guard, violet eyes blazing with controlled fury. "He is a child under my protection now." The Dragon Queen approaches with measured steps, her silver hair glowing in the light streaming through the throne room's high windows. Behind her walks Ser Jorah Mormont, his weathered hand resting on his sword hilt. "Your Grace," Cersei's voice drips with mock courtesy. "How generous of you to grace us with your presence. I trust the city burns to your satisfaction." "The city stands," Daenerys replies coolly. "My dragons are weapons of precision, not destruction. Unlike some, I prefer subjects to ashes. How disappointing. Here I hoped to deny you at least that satisfaction." Cersei raises the wildfire vial above her head. "But perhaps there are other ways to rob you of your victory." "Mother, no!" Tommen breaks from his chair, throwing himself at Cersei's legs with desperate strength. "Please, I don't want to die." The impact staggers her, and the vial flies from her grasp to shatter on the floor. Green fire spreads across the stones, eating at air and hope alike, until Jorah's quick thinking smothers it with his cloak. "Seize her," Daenerys commands, and unsullied move with mechanical precision to surround the former queen. But there is no resistance left in Cersei Lannister. With her final gambit failed, she collapses like a puppet whose strings have been cut. Tommen runs to Tyrion, throwing his arms around his uncle's legs while tears stream down his young face. "I'm sorry," he sobs. "I'm sorry for everything that happened to you. I never wanted any of this." Tyrion kneels to embrace his nephew, feeling the weight of kingdom settling on his shoulders. "You have nothing to apologize for, Your Grace. You are not responsible for the choices others made." "I'm not a king anymore, am I?" Tommen asks with the devastating honesty of childhood. "No," Tyrion admits gently. "But you're alive and free, and that matters more than any crown." Daenerys approaches the Iron Throne, studying the twisted metal with thoughtful eyes. The seat of Aegon the Conqueror sits empty, waiting for new occupants to claim its uncomfortable authority. "So," she muses, "this is what 3 centuries of Targaryen kings died for. It looks smaller than I expected." "Thrones always do," Tyrion observes, rising with Tommen still clinging to his side. "The seat itself matters less than the kingdom it represents. And the people who comprise that kingdom." Daenerys turns to address the assembled company. "Let it be known that mercy marks the beginning of my reign, not vengeance. The old queen will be given comfortable quarters and fair treatment. The young king will be educated and cared for, as befits his station." "And my crimes?" Cersei asks from where she kneels surrounded by bronze spears. "Will be judged by the people you ruled, not by me," Daenerys replies. "I am a queen, not an executioner." Hours later, as the sun sets over a city finally at peace, Tyrion stands on the Red Keep's battlements, watching ships arrive in the harbour. Shae and baby Tytos sailed from Dragonstone on the morning tide, and soon his family will be reunited in the castle where his own childhood held so much pain. Regrets? Jaime asks, joining him at the wall. Many, but not about our choices. Tyrion watches his nephew playing with wooden toys in the courtyard below, guarded by Unsullied, whose bronze masks hide gentle smiles. We broke the wheel, brother. Whatever comes next, we broke the wheel that ground so many lives to dust. And our father's legacy dies with him, as it should. Tyrion turns toward the throne room where Daenerys holds court, her silver hair gleaming beneath the Iron Throne's shadow. The Age of Lions is over. The Age of Dragons has begun. In the harbour, ships bearing the three-headed dragon banner drop anchor as darkness falls. King's Landing sleeps under new management, while in the Red Keep, a foreign queen begins the work of making herself truly royal. The Game of Thrones continues, but the players have changed, and mercy has replaced fear as the coin of the realm. It is a small victory, perhaps, but victories of any size are worth celebrating in a world too often ruled by cruelty and ambition. 3 years have passed since dragons returned to King's Landing, and the realm has learned to breathe again. The Red Keep's gardens bloom with flowers from across the known world, their colours bright as hope beneath a sky unmarked by the smoke of war. Where once fear ruled from the Iron Throne, now justice holds court with mercy as her constant companion. Tyrion Lannister, Hand of the Queen, sits at his desk in the Tower of the Hand, reviewing reports that would have made his father smile with approval. Tax revenues flow steadily from prosperous provinces. Trade agreements flourish with the free cities, and for the first time in memory, the crown's coffers overflow with gold earned rather than stolen. The granary construction in the Riverlands proceeds on schedule. He dictates to his scribe, a young woman whose literacy represents one of many small revolutions in his administration. By harvest time, no child in Westeros need fear winter's hunger. Through the window, he watches his son Titus play in the God's Wood with other children whose parents serve the crown. At 3 years old, the boy shows his father's quick wit and his mother's warm heart, though his laughter echoes in places where Tyrion's own childhood knew only silence and scorn. My lord, the scribe ventures carefully, the delegation from the Iron Bank awaits your pleasure in the Rose Chamber. Let them wait, Tyrion replies with a slight smile. Braavosi bankers appreciate patience. It suggests their time is valuable enough to be rationed. He rises from his chair, joints creaking slightly from long hours spent hunched over ledgers and legal documents. But not too much patience. We wouldn't want them to think we're disrespectful. The years of peace have aged him gently, silver threading through his pale hair, while laugh lines deepen around his mismatched eyes. The boy who once cowered in Casterly Rock's shadow has become a man who shapes kingdoms with careful words and thoughtful laws. In the royal apartments, Queen Daenerys holds court with the easy authority of someone born to rule, but tempered by the wisdom of earned power. Her silver hair falls in elaborate braids, adorned with small bells that chime softly as she moves, and her violet eyes hold depths of understanding that come only from true hardship survived. The reports from the wall grow more encouraging each moon, she tells Tyrion as he joins the morning council session. Lord Commander Snow writes that your suggestion to integrate Night's Watch veterans with regular forces has proved most successful. Jon Snow always understood that true threats require unified responses, Tyrion observes. The realm stands stronger when all its defenders work together rather than in isolation. Indeed, the integration has transformed both organizations. Former Black Brothers bring discipline and Arctic warfare experience to southern armies, while regular soldiers provide the Night's Watch with desperately needed numbers and resources. The wall stands stronger than it has in centuries, its ancient mission renewed under royal patronage. And Lady Sansa's wedding? Daenerys inquires with the genuine interest of someone who values personal happiness alongside political stability. Proceeds beautifully, Tyrion reports with satisfaction. Lord Bran Stark proves an excellent match, intelligent, kind, and patient enough to help her heal from past traumas. The North celebrates their union as a symbol of renewal after years of war. Sansa Stark, now 19, and finally free to choose her own path, found love with a distant cousin whose gentle nature provides the security she desperately needed. Their wedding will strengthen northern loyalty, while giving her the family life she always deserved. As the council session concludes, Tyrion makes his way to the Queen's private study, where Shae works on her own projects. The former camp follower has become an unofficial Queen consort in all but name, beloved by the common folk for her charitable works and genuine compassion for those who struggle. The new school in Flea Bottom opens next week, she reports, looking up from correspondence with various lords about educational funding. 50 children will learn letters and numbers, including 20 girls whose parents never dreamed they might read. A revolution disguised as charity, Tyrion observes admiringly, the most effective kind. Their marriage remains unconventional by royal standards, but solid as Castle Rock in its foundations. Love born in exile has proven more durable than political alliances forged in throne rooms, and their partnership extends far beyond personal affection to encompass shared dreams of a better world. In the afternoon, Tyrion visits the Queensguard training yard, where Sir Jaime Lannister drills young knights in sword work, despite his golden hand. At 36, the former Kingslayer has found peace in service to a queen who values honor over fear, and his face shows a contentment that 20 years in Cersei's shadow never provided. "Brother!" Jaime calls out, lowering his practice sword as Tyrion approaches. "Come to see how the new recruits fare." "Come to see how you fare," Tyrion corrects. "Command suits you better than I expected." "Service suits me," Jaime replies thoughtfully. "For the first time in my life, I protect someone worth protecting from enemies worth fighting." He pauses, studying his younger brother's face. "Do you ever regret it? Leaving behind everything we were raised to value? Every morning when I wake up beside the woman I love, see my son playing freely in gardens where I once hid from father's disapproval, and know that my work helps rather than hurts innocent people?" Tyrion's smile carries 3 years of accumulated peace. Never. That evening finds Tyrion in his private study, writing in the leather-bound journal that will someday become his memoirs. The pages chronicle their escape from King's Landing, their exile in Pentos, their alliance with the Dragon Queen, and the war that followed. But more than political history, it tells the story of how love conquered duty, how mercy triumphed over vengeance, and how the wheel of oppression finally broke. "When I was a child," he writes, "I believed that family meant obligation, that love was weakness, and that power required cruelty to maintain itself. I have learned otherwise. True power lies not in forcing obedience through fear, but in inspiring loyalty through justice. True family consists not of blood relations who cause pain, but chosen bonds that bring joy. And love, far from being weakness, provides the strength to change the world. Outside his window, King's Landing settles into peaceful evening rhythms. Market stalls close as merchants count honest profits. Children play in streets no longer shadowed by fear, and the common folk sleep soundly, knowing their queen rules with wisdom rather than whim. In the royal nursery, baby Titos sleeps in a cradle carved from dragon bone, his dreams unmarked by the nightmares that plagued his father's childhood. The boy will grow up free of the Lannister legacy, free to choose his own path without the weight of golden expectations or crimson debts. My lord, Shae enters quietly, settling beside him on the window seat that overlooks the godswood. Our son asks for a bedtime story, something about brave knights and wise queens. And does he specify whether these knights and queens live happily ever after? He insists on it, she replies with a smile that still makes Tyrion's heart skip like a youth's. He has very firm opinions about proper story endings. Then we shall give him exactly what he asks for. Tyrion closes his journal and rises, offering his arm to the woman who saved his life in more ways than she will ever know. After all, some stories deserve happy endings. Later, after tales of heroic deeds and royal wisdom have lulled their son to sleep, Tyrion and Shae walk through the godswood hand in hand. The heart tree's carved face watches them with ancient eyes that have seen dynasties rise and fall, love bloom and wither, hope die and be reborn. Do you think we've truly broken the wheel? Shae asks, her voice thoughtful in the gathering dusk. We've bent it severely, Tyrion replies. Whether it stays broken depends on those who come after us. But we've given them tools, laws that protect the innocent, institutions that serve justice, and most importantly, the example that power can be wielded with compassion. Dragons circle overhead, their great wings catching the last light of day as they patrol skies that know peace instead of war. Drogon's distant roar carries not threat but contentment, the sound of a predator well-fed and purposefully employed. And our son? What legacy do we leave him? Tyrion stops beneath the heart tree, taking her hands in his as he did on their wedding day in Pentos. Freedom to choose his own path, knowledge that love conquers hate, and the understanding that true nobility lies not in bloodlines, but in how one treats those who cannot defend themselves. As stars emerge in the darkening sky, a raven arrives bearing news from the wall. Jon Snow writes of successful negotiations with wildling clans, of ancient enmities laid aside in favor of common defense, of the realm united as it has not been in centuries. The Game of Thrones continues, but its rules have changed. Where once players competed through cruelty and betrayal, now they strive through service and sacrifice. It is not a perfect world, no world can be, but it is a better one than the realm they left behind. In the distance, bells ring the hour from the Sept of Baelor, their bronze voices carrying across a city that sleeps without fear for the first time in a generation. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new decisions, new opportunities to choose compassion over expedience. But tonight, in the Red Keep's gardens where dragons once roosted and kings once ruled through terror, a former dwarf of Casterly Rock watches his son sleep and dares to believe that redemption is possible even for the most broken souls. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. April 17th, 2026, 11:18:37. Glob. Pattern, /projects/Game of Thrones. What if /*. April 17th, 2026, 11:18:42. Bash. Command. Find /dash. Type f-name / quotestar.md / quote@pipehead-20. Description. Find markdown files in current directory. April 17th and 2026, 11:18:44. Bash. Command. LSS-Ella. Description. List current directory contents. April 17th, 2026, 11:18:48. Read. File_path. C:\users / shadow / desktop backslash compiled binaries, backslash Claude code, generation fate, 2, backslash output files, backslash Game of Thrones, what if dash 2 hours dash 12 characters, backslash video number 28, script JIL, backslash project guide, Game of Thrones what if, v1.json, April 17th, 2026, 11:18:59. Read, file underscore path, C:, backslash users, backslash shadow, backslash desktop, backslash compiled binaries, backslash Claude code, generation file 2, backslash output files, backslash Game of Thrones, what if dash 2 hours dash 12 characters, backslash, video number 28, script JIL, backslash titles.txt, April 17th, 2026, 11:19:07. Tool search, DORT query, select web search, max underscore results, 1, April 17th, 2026, 11:19:21. Web search, query, Tyrion Lannister, Shae relationship, Game of Thrones timeline trial, Joffrey murder, April 17th, 2026, 11:19:32. Web search, query, Game of Thrones, King's Landing, escape routes, Tyrion Lannister, timeline, Season 4, Tywin Lannister death, April 17th, 2026, 11:19:46. Web search, Elijah query, Game of Thrones, Season 4, political landscape, King's Landing Cersei, Jaime Lannister, Oberyn Martell trial by combat, April 17th, 2026, 11:21:12. Right, file underscore path, C:, users, shadow, desktop, compiled binaries, Claude code, generation by, 2, output, files, Game of Thrones, what if dash 2 hours, dash 12 characters, video number 28, script JIL, outline.md, content. What if Tyrion Lannister escaped King's Landing with Shae and never looked back? Canon divergence point, tie, April 17th, 2026, 11:23:14. Right, file underscore path, C:, users, shadow, desktop, compiled binaries, Claude code, generation 5, 2, output, files, Game of Thrones, what if dash 2 hours dash 12 characters, video number 28, script JIL, chapter 1, .txt, content. What if Tyrion Lannister escaped King's Landing with Shae and never looked back? Let's explore the depths of it, April 17th, 2026, 11:25:07. Right, file underscore path, C:, users, shadow, desktop, compiled binaries, Claude code, generation feed, 2, output files, Game of Thrones, what if, 2 hours, 12 characters, video number 28, script JIL, chapter 2, .txt, content. The narrow sea churns beneath a grey dawn sky, waves crashing over the merchant ship's bow as it cuts through the April 17th, 2026, 11:26:58. Right, file underscore path, C:, users, shadow, desktop, compiled binaries, Claude code, generation vis, 2, output files, Game of Thrones, what if, 2 hours, 12 characters, video number 28, script JIL, chapter 3.txt, content. 6 months after their escape, the morning sun streams through the tall windows of Tyrion's study in Magister Ill, April 17th, 2026, 11:29:01. Right, file underscore path, C:, users, shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code, generation vi 2 / output files / Game of Thrones, what if - 2 hours - 12 characters / video number 28, script JIL / chapter 4 .txt content. The assassin strikes at dawn, when the servants are lighting fires and the guards are weary from their night watch. April 17th, 2026, 11:30:51. Write file _path / users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code, generation vi 2 / output files / Game of Thrones, what if - 2 hours - 12 characters / video number 28, script JIL / chapter 5.txt content. The shadow falls across Pentos at midday, when the sun should reign supreme over the Golden City. Citizens pause, April 17th, 2026, 11:33:01. Write file _path / users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code, generation vi 2 / output files / Game of Thrones, what if 2 hours 12 chapters / video number 28, script JIL / chapter 6.txt content. The Lannister fleet arrives at dawn, 30 warships flying the Golden Lion as they fill Pentos' harbour like a pea. April 17th, 2026, 11:34:51. Write file _path / users / shadow / desktops / compiled binaries / Claude code, generation vi - 2 / output files / Game of Thrones, what if 2 hours 12 characters / video number 28, script JIL / chapter 7.txt content. The dragon's roar splits the morning air like the sound of the world ending. Drogon rises from the Great Pyramid, April 17th, 2026, 11:37:02. Write file _path / users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code, generation vi 2 / output files / Game of Thrones, what if 2 hours 12 characters / video number 28, script JIL / chapter 8.txt content. Smoke rises from the ruined harbour like incense to forgotten gods. The acrid smell of burned ships and dreams min. April 17th, 2026, 11:39. Write file _path / users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code, generation vi 2 / output files / Game of Thrones, what if 2 hours 12 chapters / video number 28, script JIL / chapter 9.txt content. The War Council meets at dawn in the Great Pyramid's highest chamber, where maps of Westeros cover every surface. April 17th, 2026, 11:40:54. Write file _path / users / shadow / desktop / compiled binaries / Claude code, generation vi 2 / output files / Game of Thrones, what if - 2 hours - 12 characters / video number 28, script JIL / chapter 10.txt content. 3 great shadows fall across Blackwater Bay as the dragons soar toward their ancient home. Drogon leads the F, April 17th, 2026, 11:42:55. Write file path users shadow Desktops compiled binaries Claude code, generation v2do, output files Game of Thrones, what if, 2 hours, 12 characters, video 28, script Gillo chapter 11, .txt, content. The dragons descend on King's Landing like the wrath of ancient gods, their shadows falling across walls that hole, April 17th, 2026, 11:44:45. Write, file path. C. Users or shadows. Desktops, compiled binaries, Claude code, generation, Vinahowahon output files Game of Thrones. What if, 2 hours, 12 characters. Video, 28, script Gillo chapter 12 TXT. Content. 3 years have passed since dragons returned to King's Landing, and the realm has learned to breathe again.